I forbade my son from attending his girlfriend's funeral, thinking it would save him from her toxic influence. He defied me, and I locked him out forever. My 20-year-old son Noah has always been the focal point of my life. For a long time, it was just the two of us. Noah's father, Mark, left when he was 10, and I was the one who kept things together. I worked 2 jobs, made sure he had all he needed, pushed him to earn good grades, and helped him plan for college. I was strict, but I needed to be. I was not going to let my only child waste his future. Then he met Maya, a 19-year-old female. She was in his senior year at the same high school and came from what I can only characterize as a shattered family. Her mother, Karen, was continuously changing jobs, and her father, David, was not present. From the time I met her, I had the impression she intended to bring Noah down to her level. She was always outgoing, passionate, and emotional about everything. The type of girl who thrived in chaos. She'd show up at our house in ripped jeans and unkempt hair, calling me Mrs. Reed as if we were pals. I informed Noah right away that I did not approve of her and that she was not the type of girl he should be serious with at his age. But he did not listen. He claimed I didn't comprehend her. They were inseparable for more than a year. I began to notice that his grades were slipping. He'd stay out late, cease checking in, and arrive home smelling like her perfume. I told him he was becoming someone I didn't recognize. We battled almost weekly. I even tried to put my foot down by telling him he was not permitted to see her under my house. He labeled me controlling and claimed I didn't want him to be happy. It was not that. I wanted him to be protected. I recognized my own mistakes in him. I too became pregnant at the age of 20 with a man who abandoned me before the ink on the birth certificate dried. I've spent half my life excavating out of that hole. I did not want Noah to repeat history with a girl who had no future. Then the accident occurred. It was Sunday morning. Maya and her friends were traveling home from a late-night concert when the driver fell asleep behind the wheel. The automobile flipped, 4 children were hospitalized, and Maya did not survive. Noah was at work when he received the call from one of her pals, and I'll never forget his reaction when he heard it. He collapsed right in the kitchen. For 4 days, he seldom ate or slept. I tried to console him, but he refused to let me approach. He just sat in his room, sobbing over her images. I reminded him that while I understood his sadness, he couldn't let it destroy him. I told him he needed to move on, focus on the future, and not wallow in grief over a girl who had made all the wrong decisions. Then he informed me he wanted to attend the burial. I said no. He lost it. He yelled at me, saying that I was callous, that she meant everything to him, and that he couldn't live with himself if he didn't say goodbye. I informed him that funerals were for family, and that she was not his wife. He described her as more of a family member than I ever was. That one stings. I told him he couldn't go because it would merely rekindle old scars and he should focus on college applications rather than languishing. He went off and slammed his door, and I assumed that was the end of it. The next morning, I awoke to find his bed made and his shoes gone. His phone was still charging on his desk, but his car keys were gone. I contacted his pals, but nobody answered. Later that afternoon, I noticed some photos on social media. He stood at the casket, grieving in front of everyone. Someone had tagged him. My heart sank and I felt ashamed, as if I had been publicly disobeyed by my own son. I was waiting when he got home that night. I told him to go. I told him if he believed he was so mature, he could go live like an adult. I replied I'd had enough of being insulted in my own home. He raged at me, saying I was evil, and that she would hate me even more now. I told him to go. He walked out the door without saying another word. I locked it behind him. That night I grabbed his clothes, posters and computer. I donated the majority of it the next day. I tossed away a handful of his personal items, including letters, photographs, and keepsakes from that girl. I did not want them in my home. I convinced myself I was ridding the house of negative energy, the toxic influence that had turned my son against me. When neighbors and family inquired, I replied Noah had fled. I informed them that he had packed everything and departed because he wanted to start afresh. I even told my sister Rachel that he was probably staying with Maya's family. I figured that would make them stop asking questions. It did. That was 10 days ago. I have not heard a single word from him. There are no calls, messages, or anything. Noah's best friend Ryan texted me that he was safe, but did not say where. I told him to tell Noah that I had changed the locks. He never responded. I'm not sure what I expected. I expected him to come back begging, or at least call, once he realized how foolish he had been. But now the house seems empty. The silence is terrible. I constantly checking my phone for messages, but they never come. I still believe I was correct not to let him attend that funeral. That girl damaged him, and if I hadn't intervened, he would have followed her road straight into catastrophe. But now I am beginning to worry if I went too far. My sister thinks I'm cruel. She claimed if Mom were still alive, she would call me a monster. It aches. I did everything for that boy. I devoted decades of my life to raising him alone. I only wanted to prevent him from falling into the same trap I did. I used to believe that being firm meant loving someone. I figured keeping him away from her would save him. Instead, it feels as if I buried them both. Everyone online calls me callous. One of Maya's friends even made a Facebook post about me, writing, "I banned my son from mourning." People are messaging me, calling me names. I don't think anyone realizes how terrible it is to watch your child spiral into something you know is bad for them. Perhaps I went too far, but I don't believe I was wrong to try to protect him. I still haven't slept. Every time I close my eyes, I hear him shouting, "You buried me with her." I keep seeing his face in that funeral photo. He appeared older, damaged, like if I had lost him long before that night. I leave the porch light on just in case. I don't know if he will ever return. Update 1. It's been about 3 weeks since my original article, and I need to clarify a few points since people, both online and in person, are spreading misinformation about me. I've been accused of being abusive, of discarding my son like trash, and of being some sort of monster. I understand how that post made me seem. I was angry when I wrote it, raw and hurt. Maybe I did not explain things well enough. Perhaps people read what they wanted to read, but I refused to let them rewrite the story as if I were some cold-hearted villain who despised her own child. Noah still has not returned home. That is the portion that I cannot spin or soften. Regardless of hard I try, I know where he is now. Maya's parents visited my place 5 days ago. They did not even call first. They just arrived on my porch with that look, the one individuals give when they've already decided what kind of person you are. Her mother, Karen, stood there gripping her pocketbook, as if she were about to swing it at me. Her father, David, said they needed to talk about Noah. Apparently, he has been staying with them. They stated he turned up the night after I told him to leave, still dressed for the funeral. They took him in because, quote, "No child deserves to be homeless after losing the person they love." When I inquired how long they meant to keep him there, David said, "As long as he needs." Karen then looked me dead in the eyes and stated, "He's safe with us." You've done enough. That phrase keeps repeating in my thoughts. I told them they were overstepping, that this was not their place, and that they were using his pain to fill the void their daughter had left. Karen shot back. At least they didn't throw their child out into the street. I told her she was fortunate to have a child worth keeping. She slapped me hard. I didn't hit back. I'm not that type of person. I asked them both to leave before calling the cops. They left, but not before David added, "You buried him right along with her." It's the second time I've heard those words, first from Noah, and now from them. That sentence is becoming very irritating to me. I tried calling him after that visit. Clearly he did not take up. His old numbers remained disconnected. So I received their home number from my sister, Rachel, who somehow possessed it. He responded after a few rings. He didn't even sound like my son when he said hi. It was flat and freezing. I said, "Noah, it's Mom." There was nearly a minute of stillness before he replied, "You buried me with her." He then hung up. I know everyone will tell me I deserved it, but no one understands what it's like to see your child drift away from you piece by piece. To have him idolize someone you know will ruin him. Maya was not a horrible child, but she was troubled. She had a wild attitude that drew everyone else into the storm. I was not attempting to punish Noah. I was trying to prevent him from drowning. And perhaps I was overly harsh, but I was desperate. Parents do not receive manuals for this. After my first post, someone in our town, I'm not sure who, found it and shared screenshots on Facebook. Everyone now knows. People from my church, neighbors, co-workers, and even Noah's former teachers. It has been humiliating. The comments are harsh. I've been branded abusive, narcissistic and callous. Our pastor, Pastor Bennett, told me, "Maybe you should take some time away from community events because you've become a distraction." Translation. He doesn't want to deal with the gossip. Even my sister turned against me. She texted me saying she had seen the article and that I needed professional assistance. I informed her that she has always had a soft spot for drama and has no idea how to raise a child alone. She replied, "I don't need to know. I know you went too far." Another phrase that I keep hearing. Okay, maybe I did. But no one is looking at the whole picture. Noah has always been emotional and sensitive. He takes everything to heart. Even as a child, he would cry if I raised my voice. I needed to be the strong one, the adult. Someone has to keep this family together. If I had let every teenage whim of his rule our lives, we'd still be cleaning up after his actions. I have never been unkind for the sake of it. Every rule and limit stemmed from love. The type that does not crumble just because your child smashes a door. What hurts the most is that people assume I gave his belongings out of malice. That is not true. Yes, I got rid of some items that reminded me of her, letters, pictures, trinkets. But I also donated many of his clothes to charity. I did not burn or toss them away, as some have suggested. I wanted to help other disadvantaged families. If anything, that was my attempt to convert a difficult situation into something positive. But everyone turns it into a nasty deed. Even my co-workers look at me differently today. One of them muttered that I donated her son, rather than his clothes. That day, I came close to quitting. I've been praying every night for him to return home. I don't want to be right, I just want him safe. I've kept the porch light on since the night he left. My neighbors surely think I'm nuts. Perhaps I am. But when I see the glow in the driveway, I nearly think he's about to pull in. Last night I learned from a mutual friend that Noah has been seeing her former counselor, Dr. Collins, for therapy. That felt like another betrayal, as if he were rewriting his pain as a tale in which I was the villain and she was the saint. According to the acquaintance, Maya's parents drive him there twice a week and then he remains for dinner with them. They even assisted him in enrolling in online programs because he did not feel comfortable returning home. I can't convey how angry I was after hearing that. Not jealousy. Something worse. I did all of the difficult parts of motherhood. I stayed awake with him through every fever, grief, and missing homework project. I taught him to drive. I worked double shifts to purchase his first laptop. I worked hard to get him into a decent college. And now these people, these strangers, get to play house with him because I made a single mistake. That is not fair. I emailed him last night. It was not ideal. I was emotional. But I assured him I was still his mother. That I would always love him, and that he did not belong in that house. I informed him that they were trying to replace their daughter with him. I said, "Noah, you're not their son. You're mine." He didn't respond. Instead, this morning I received a short message from an unknown number. It simply said, "Stop contacting me. You've buried me with her 3 times. Same words. I don't know what to feel anymore. Guilt. Fury. Or both. I want to believe I can still solve this. That one day he will see I did the right thing. But with each passing day, it feels like the ground is slipping away from under me. People keep encouraging me to apologize and accept responsibility for my actions, but they don't realize that an apology would not restore the years I spent constructing our life. It will not make him trust me again. Sometimes I sit in his old room, or what's left of it, and reflect on how peaceful it is. There is no music, no dirty clothes on the floor, and no sound of him pacing while on the phone. I used to gripe about all of these things. Now, the silence feels like punishment. I'm not sure if he'll ever come home, but if he does, I'll be prepared. I will still expect respect and boundaries. I am his mother, not his enemy. But I'll agree that the house feels colder without him. Update 2. It's been 8 months since my previous post. If you're here to gloat, you'll get your fill quickly. As far as I know, Noah is officially and forever gone. He relocated out of state in March. He is currently attending some college in Oregon. I only discovered out when Rachel forwarded me a Christmas letter from one of Maya's relatives, of all people. Apparently, he has been accepted into the photography program there. Funny, because when I pushed him for engineering scholarships, he claimed I was strangling his creative energy. I suppose he finally achieved the independence he desired. He changed everything, even his phone number and email address. I've been blocked on every social media platform he has ever used. The only thing that remains is his previous Facebook profile picture, which shows him and Maya at a pumpkin farm. He's locked there at 18, smiling as if he doesn't have the entire world ahead of him. I keep saying he as if he were a stranger because that is how it seems right now. A stranger I once raised. My reputation in town has deteriorated since the last update. I used to be the head of our church's women's auxiliary. They replaced me discreetly. No meeting, no thank you present, and no mention. People still smile when they see me at the grocery store, but it's a pity grin, the type you give to someone you believe is damaged. I hear whispers when walking down the baking aisle. That's the woman who threw her son out. One morning someone scribbled "monster" in chalk on my mailbox. At first, I wanted to shout at everyone that they didn't know the complete story and that I was protecting my child from making the same mistakes I did. But, after months of silence from him, I began to worry if they knew. Perhaps they didn't need the specifics to identify a mother who went too far. Nonetheless, I refuse to portray myself as evil. I am not a storybook villain twirling her hair in the dark. I was a mother doing what she believed was necessary. People act as if love should always be soft and yielding. That is not love. Love is discipline. It's structure. It's knowing when to say no, even if it means breaking your heart. That was what I used to tell myself anyway. The house feels different now. I used to think I desired silence. No loud music, no slamming doors. Now I can't take it. It's a humming silence that seems heavy and vibrant. Even though I know he isn't there, I can sometimes hear his footsteps. I have not touched his old room since February. I tried at first. I actually did. After I tossed everything away that night, I promised myself not to dwell. But one day, I discovered one of his old school notebooks at the bottom of a box I had overlooked, and for some reason, I couldn't get rid of it. I put it on his shelf, and that sparked it. I slowly began putting things back together. An old hoodie, a baseball cap, and a photo of him with our dog. The room appears to have been lived in again, however this is a falsehood. It is a shrine. Now I get what that sounds like. But it is not obsessive. It is memory. It's attempting to preserve evidence that there once was laughing in this house. In late March I drove to the cemetery. I told myself I was going to see my parents' graves, but that was a lie. I parked at the far end, near the section where Maya was buried. I waited until after dusk, when the caregivers were gone. Her burial was adorned with fresh flowers, predominantly lilies, as well as a few wild daisies, which she liked to collect and braid into her hair when she visited our house. I remained there for a while, watching the wind blow through them. Someone had left a camera keychain and a small folded letter behind a stone. I didn't have to open it to recognize it was from him. I'd brought my own note. I had rewrote it 3 times. The initial version was angry and accusatory, much like everything else I'd spoken throughout my life. The second was defensive, an attempt to excuse what I had done. The third was the only one that I could do without shaking. It said, "I wanted to protect you, but I forgot you weren't a boy anymore. You didn't need saving. You needed trust. I failed you." I left it beneath one of the blooms. Then I sat in my car sobbing until my throat burnt. I hadn't sobbed since his father, Mark, had left 14 years earlier. A few days later, I received a voicemail from a number I did not know. The voice was older and calmer, but I knew it was his. He spoke. "Mom, I got your note. I'm not mad anymore. I'm grateful in a way. You taught me how to survive things I thought would kill me. You also taught me how to walk away from things that were destroying me. Thank you for that." He left a message before I responded. There is no return number. Only that message. That's the cruelest kindness of all. Hearing his forgiveness and knowing it doesn't provide a way back in. I play it virtually every night. At first, I viewed it as a sign that he will eventually return home, but it has been months and nothing. I believe that message was not an invitation, it was a goodbye. My sister Rachel suggested that I sell the house and relocate somewhere else to start again. She commented, "This place is haunted." Perhaps she is correct, but it feels like the only thing I have left of him. I wander through each room, recalling the sound of his words echoing off the walls. Every crack in the floorboards feels like a conversation that never ended. Sometimes, late at night, I sit at the kitchen table and write letters that I will never send. Letters in which I inform him about minor things like the new neighbors who installed wind chimes, the dog 2 streets over that barks every morning, and the smell of rain on the old fence. I imagine he is somewhere warm and full of sunshine. This is how I cope. I've started going to therapy, not because I think I need to be fixed. I still don't believe I'm broken, but I can't continue living in this half-life of guilt and silence. Dr. Collins, the therapist, asked me during our first session why I despised Maya so much. I told her I didn't. I despised what she represented. She questioned what that meant, and I replied, freedom, because that's what it was. She was the type of girl who rushed into life without thinking twice, unconcerned about the repercussions. I used to be like that, before Noah. Prior to taking on responsibility. Prior to becoming pregnant at the age of 20, I had to abandon all of my dreams. Maya reminded me of the girl I used to be, carefree, innocent and full of optimism. And I despised her for it. Dr. Collins commented that it sounded like I wasn't attempting to save Noah from her. I was attempting to prevent myself from remembering. I did not have an answer for that. I no longer post online, not after my last update was widely shared, but I keep reading the comments. Some people were harsh, undoubtedly, but others said something that stayed with me. Control is not the same as love. I have thought about that sentence every day since. When I was younger, I thought love meant protecting others from sorrow, even if it meant causing it. I imagined I could shape my son's life in the same way I would shape a garden, pruning what didn't belong and cutting what would grow wild. But humans are not gardens. You are not allowed to cut their hearts to make them neat. You may either let them bloom, or lose them. And I lost him. The house is quiet again tonight. The porch light is still on. I've never turned it off. Not once in 8 months. But now I realize it isn't a beacon. It is a memorial. Final update. 1 year has passed. I began by counting the days, followed by the weeks. Then I stopped for a bit since it made the hours seem longer. I now know the number, 366. When I wake up, I announce it out, much like a weather report. It reminds me that time moves, even when I feel stuck. People told me to let the thread die, accept my guilt, and go silent. I did get quiet, but I don't believe shame solves anything on its own. Outsiders see silence as orderly. Inside, it rots. I'm writing today because I have something to say, and quitting the story at the midway point would be one more act of control. I've done enough of those. I made changes since my last update. Not big movie changes, but actual ones. I joined 3 organizations. One is a grief circle that meets in a church basement on Wednesday evenings. The pastor, Pastor Bennett, is unfamiliar with my name. I like it. We sit in ancient chairs, drink cardboard-tasting coffee, and say difficult sentences aloud. The other is for parents with estranged adult children. The room is quieter. The words get trapped in the throat. People whisper their children's ages as if they were lit candles. I still see my therapist, Dr. Collins, on Mondays. She does not allow me to dodge. She asks few inquiries, then waits. I initially despised her for keeping me waiting. Now I understand that stillness is where the truth finally emerges. She made me write the same words every morning for a month. Control is not care. It felt stupid. Then, on day 14, I wrote it and remembered the porch light I had left on, and understood it wasn't a welcome. It was a spotlight. Despite the fact that the stage was empty, I continued to direct the scenario. I tried to reach Noah in the spring. Nor a surprise attack, nor a stunt. I went through the normal channels. The student services office at his college. I submitted a short letter in the envelope provided for this reason. It read, "I hope you're safe. I'm in treatment. I am proud of you, whether you talk to me or not." I included my phone number with my address. I signed it, Mom. 3 weeks later, the form email arrived. It stated that the student had requested that no personal texts be forwarded. It was nice, clear, and final. I read it 3 times, closed my laptop, and waited in the backyard until the motion lights turned off. I didn't drive to the airport. I did not seek out his dorm. I didn't call anyone to plead. I went to my Wednesday group and announced out, "He asked for no contact." It stung, but it felt clean. Summer made the house hot. I left the windows open at night, and the breeze brought other people's lives into my kitchen. Laughter, a baby wailing, and a pop song from 2 streets away. I stopped sitting in Noah's room. I shut and left the door closed, not as a shrine, but as a boundary. Dr. Collins remarked, "You keep trying to rebuild the past when you are supposed to be building a future." I told her I didn't know how. She explained, "Professional stubbornness counts for something. Aim it at the correct object." So I utilized it. I discovered a youth center 2 towns away that hosts a program for teenagers who have lost someone. I filled out documents, went through background checks, and attended training where they taught you to listen without fixing. The first night I observed a boy scuff the toe of his shoe on the floor for an hour without saying anything. The second night, he said his father's name and wailed into his sleeves. I sat beside him and counted my own breaths. I didn't give a lecture about resilience. I handed him a box of tissues and told him, "I am not going anywhere." When I left, my clothes smelled like bleach from the rec room, and I was fatigued in a way that suddenly made sense. Around October, I received a letter. The envelope was cream and made of thick paper, similar to what is used for weddings or condolence cards. My hands shook as I opened it, thinking it might be from Noah. It was not. It came from Maya's parents, Karen and David. I sat at the table and read it twice before the words became still. They stated that they had not forgotten what had occurred to us. They wrote that certain wounds produce scar tissue while others remain sensitive. They reported that Noah was doing well. He is still in school. He has friends. He works part-time at a camera business that still processes film in the rear. He will graduate on time if he maintains his current grades. They wrote that he doesn't detest me. He is adamant about no contact. That firm was underlined once. They claimed he asked them to let me know he was safe, housed, and not doing anything to dull himself. I cried loudly and quickly, like a hiccup. The second page featured the kind of mercy that stings. Karen wrote, "There are details I never knew." She said that she debated whether to include them. Then she penned them nevertheless, because secrets become poison if left buried too long. Maya was pregnant when she died prematurely. She had informed Noah a week before the crash. They were both terrified. They had not informed their parents. They planned to speak with a counselor. He'd scheduled the appointment. It was the Wednesday after. There is no after. I set the letter down and stood in Noah's room. The door open. The air smelled like dust and laundry detergent. I sat on the side of the bed, spoke the word grandchild into an empty room, and felt something in my chest gently tear. The way old fabric gives when you pull on a rip. I now understand why he said those words to me. You buried me with her. He had lost more than just a girl. He'd lost a future that he hadn't even had time to plan. I respected his right to mourn in the place and time that was appropriate for him. I did not simply miss the mark. I took the bow out of his hands. I replied back to Karen and David. I didn't argue. I did not provide a defense. I thanked them for telling the truth, and for being compassionate to my son, even when I wasn't. I stated that I would not contact them again until asked. I intended it. Some people believe that setting boundaries is a sign of weakness. It isn't. It is a barrier you erect around your darkest tendencies. November brought colder temperatures and shorter days. Work remained steady. People in my community eventually ran out of gossip or were bored. One woman in the cereal aisle tried to corner me with pity, but I answered, "No, thank you," and left. It felt like a small backbone was sprouting back. My sister Rachel called on Thanksgiving. She asked if I wanted company. I invited her to come by at noon for pie and coffee, not dinner. She sniffed at the limit. She arrived at lunchtime. She departed at 1:30. We did not discuss Noah for more than 5 minutes. I didn't weep. I felt relieved when she backed out of my driveway. Relief is not treachery. It's breathing. December is always a tough month. Lights light up, music plays in stores, and memories become loud. The youth center requested volunteers to help a few families decorate. I answered yes, no, and yes again. The morning of, I awoke at 4:30 a.m. and sat on the couch with the tree lot flyer in my lap, remembering how Noah and I debated about tinsel versus ribbon last Christmas. He despised ribbon. He claimed it made a tree resemble a birthday present. I purchased tinsel. I believed that was a sign of compromise. The center trip concluded around nightfall. The air had a bite. I drove home via a path I hadn't taken in a year. Habit, I suppose, or muscle memory. It led me past Karen and David's street. I promised myself I'd keep going. I slowed at the corner anyhow. Their house is set back from the road, with blue shutters and a porch swing. Somebody had strung nice white lights along the railing. Through the window I noticed a tall man on a ladder inside, reaching to place a star. The person on the floor reached up to hold it steady. He laughed. I recognize his laugh. It begins in his chest and hides in his neck. I parked a half block away and watched like a robber. I despised myself for it. I watched anyway. He appears to be older. Not hard or exhausted but rather filled out. His hair used to flop into his eyes, but it's shorter now. His stance differs. He seemed to have picked up his life and moved it to a new location. He moved the ladder, climbed down, and hugged the person holding it. David. Then a petite woman entered from the kitchen, a dish towel on her shoulder, and kissed his temple. Karen gave him a spool of wire. He took it and held it as if it were the most normal thing in the world, being handed what you need in a room where you are desired. I could have gotten out. I could have walked up the stairs and knocked. I could have asked for a minute. I may have wrecked someone else's evening. Instead I shifted back into drive and drove around the block twice until the shaking in my hands subsided. Then I headed home. I switched off my porch light for the first time since his departure. I did not do it as a huge symbol. I did it since the individuals who need a light are not currently coming to my door. They live in a brightly lit house. Mine will be lit for someone else at another time. Perhaps not for him. That's not a curse. I'm learning how to express it without making it an indictment. On Christmas morning, the mail delivered a little padded envelope. There was no return address, but the postmark came from his city. Inside was a photograph. Real film, matte finish, black and white. It portrayed 2 pairs of hands, one larger and one smaller, with fingers linked. He had scribbled the shutter speed and f-stop in the corner, as he had done for school assignments before. On the rear, continue to grow. No name or number. I pinned it on the corkboard over my desk, next to the paper on which I scribbled, "Control is not care. They belong together." If you're looking for a tidy finale, you'll be disappointed. There is no reunion to share, no unexpected knock, and no thaw following a year-long phone call. My grief group would refer to this as acceptance. I refer to it as paying the bill. I wrote the check a year ago. It keeps clearing. I'm not a doormat. I'm not a martyr. I am a mother who made a poor decision and then decided not to make 5 more to compensate for the first. I now set boundaries, primarily for myself. I do my task. I honor my promises to children who are not mine because they show up and they require an adult who remains in the chair when things get difficult. On Wednesdays, I drive home from the church basement, roll down the window, and feel the cold on my face to remind myself that I am living. Not just a record of mistakes. People have asked me in messages why I continue to write in the first person present when the worst is over. It is not past. Regret exists in the present. So does whatever this difficult little hope is. It is not the traditional hope. That everything will return to normal. That hope was made up of control, denial, and terror. This one is quieter. It sounds like me saying, if he calls me at 80, I will answer. Or like a youngster at the youth center telling a joke about his uncle and the entire room laughing. Sometimes it sounds like my own voice saying goodnight to a house that listens back. Last night, I traveled the long way again, this time to the cemetery rather than his street. I parked outside the gate because it was late and walked along the fence to the corner of the portion where the lilies bloom. I did not bring a note. I did not need one. The grass was rigid with frost, and the stars resembled pins. A little bunch of daisies rested against the stone. A folded paper lay behind a smooth rock. I did not touch it. I don't need to touch anything that is not mine anymore. On my walk home, I passed 3 houses with lights still turned on inside. People moving behind curtains, warm light on wood floors. I briefly considered pulling into my driveway and putting on the porch light. I did not. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and turned on the lamp next to the couch. The space was bright enough to see through, enough to sit, breathe, and be. The lights in their house appeared warm. I used to think that warmth equaled control. Now I understand that it is the one thing I cannot demand. I can just get here, hold it steady, and wait without bringing anyone along who doesn't want to be here. If that's my conclusion, it's an honest one. Mom said Paris was cancelled due to budget issues. Then I saw 92 photos. My parents, their other kids, but not me. I cut them off when they came back. My mother's voice sounded remorseful, perhaps even embarrassed. "Sweetie, I have some disappointing news about the anniversary trip," she told me. "Your father and I had to cancel Paris. Budget concerns arose, and we simply cannot afford it right now." I felt genuine sadness for them. 30 years of marriage are worth celebrating, and they'd been preparing this trip for nearly a year. Mom had sent me links to cafes, museums, and even the little hotel they had chosen in the Marais district. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I know you were really looking forward to it." "These things happen," she said. "Maybe next year. How are things for you?" We talked for another 20 minutes about my job, teaching high school English, my apartment, and nothing particularly significant. She seemed regular, loving as always. I am 34 years old, and I've always thought I had a close relationship with my parents. For the majority of my childhood, I was convinced that I was the only child. My childhood in suburban Connecticut was pleasant, steady, and uneventful in the best possible manner. Dad worked in insurance. Mom was a nurse who worked part-time when I began school. We held family dinners. They attended my soccer games. Normal stuff. Only there was always something slightly odd that I couldn't quite identify. Small comments here and there. Mom's expressions at times were difficult to read. How specific themes were subtly shifted. A week after that phone call, I was perusing through Facebook during my lunch break, delaying on making report card comments, to be honest. That's when Ashley Reed's post arrived in my newsfeed. Ashley was one of my childhood neighbors. We were cordial, but not close. The type of individuals who liked each other's postings but rarely communicated. Her most recent update showed her smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower, with the description, "Surprise family reunion in the City of Light." Best week ever. My finger froze on the screen. I opened the album. 92 photos loaded slowly, each one twisting something further within my chest. My mother was at a cafe, wearing a striped shirt and sunglasses and holding a croissant. My father laughed, his wine glass rising. Ashley's parents, whom I had known since childhood, and 3 more people I had never seen in family photos. A woman in her mid-30s with dark curls. A man around my age with my father's nose and chin. A younger woman, about 28, with my mother's eyes and smile. They were not going on the trip as buddies. The body language told a different story. The way my mother wrapped her arm around the curly-haired woman. How my father stood between the man and my mother. His hands on both their shoulders. The comfortable intimacy in each shot. Photo 16 shows all 6 of them in a restaurant, champagne glasses lifted. The caption stated, "To family, no matter how complicated." Photo 27 shows my mother and the curly-haired woman, heads together, laughing at something off camera. Photo 46 shows my father with his arms around both women, appearing happier than I had seen him in years. Photo 69, all of them in front of Notre Dame, posing like any family tourist photo, except, I'm not in it. I sat in the teacher's lounge, staring at my phone, until the 5th period bell rang. My hands were shaking. Students filed past me in the corridor, and I barely saw them. She'd mentioned budget difficulties. They paid for flights to Paris, lodgings, lunches, wine, and museum tickets, everything captured in Ashley's 92 images, which she had kindly uploaded and categorized. However, there was no money to include me. No one expressed a wish to incorporate me. I returned home that afternoon and opened my laptop, delving into old family photos for the first time. Birthday parties at which I was the sole child. Holidays with only the 3 of us. Even at extensive family events I had never seen these 3 folks. The curly-haired woman resembled my mother's jawline, the man held my father's hands. The younger woman combined all of their looks, resulting in 3 people who looked considerably more like my parents than me. I have blonde hair and blue eyes. Both my parents are brunettes with brown eyes. They'd always say I looked like my grandma and showed me old images of a woman I somewhat resembled. I had never questioned it. My fingers moved almost instinctively, scanning adoption registries and genealogy websites for any information that could help me. But I stopped myself. If I had been adopted, they would have told me, right? Unless they felt humiliated. Unless I was a mistake that they were stuck with. Unless I was something they'd taken on out of obligation, while their true children, their wanted children, were elsewhere. For hours the thoughts raced through my mind. I did not sleep. I kept going back to those images, scrutinizing every grin, casual touch, and moment of joy that I hadn't been invited to participate. The following morning, I called in sick. I spent the day staring at the walls, my phone, and nothing. Friends texted. I did not respond. There was a weight crushing down on my chest, making breathing difficult. My mother called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. She left a pleasant message about coming by this weekend and possibly going to lunch as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just returned from Paris and those 92 images didn't exist. I erased Facebook from my phone, then reinstalled it an hour later and checked the album again. Ashley had added 98 images. One featured my mother and father on top of the Arc de Triomphe, his arm around her waist, both glowing. Another photo showed all 6 of them having a candlelit meal, with the remark, "Finally, everyone together. Worth the wait. Finally, everyone is together." The message was clear. I was not everyone. I was something distinct, someone different. Days have passed. I worked on autopilot at work, returned home to an empty apartment, and avoided all interaction with my parents. Mom called twice more, and texted to see if I was okay. I replied with quick messages. "I'm busy with work." "Talk soon," she said, appearing satisfied. 3 weeks after I saw the images, my mother texted again. This time around, the tone was different. "Sweetie, I need your assistance with something vital. Could you please call me when you get a minute?" I looked at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to dismiss it completely. A part of me wanted to call and shout. Instead, I replied, "What is wrong?" 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing and waiting. Then her reaction came in. "It is complicated. I really do need to explain over the phone. Kindly call me. It is about your father. My father is playing the concern card, the family emergency card." I could see her strategy, get me worried, get me interested, and then ask for whatever she really wanted, money, time, or any favor she felt she deserved because I was supposed to be the beautiful daughter. The daughter who did not receive an invitation to Paris. My thumb hovered over the call button, then I opened Facebook, looked at those photographs again, and allowed the hurt turn colder, harder, and more useful. I responded, "Is this the same father that had budget concerns with Paris? The one in the 92 Facebook images Ashley shared from your family vacation? Is that the father?" The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared, and disappeared. 6 minutes passed, then a dozen. Finally, "Can we please discuss this in person?" "No, text works fine." Another prolonged delay. I could image her panic, trying to figure out how much I knew, how I found out, and what she may say. It's not as you think, please allow me to explain. Explain what? Explain why you lied about canceling the trip. Explain who those 3 people are. Explain why your budget only covered 6 aircraft tickets, not 7. This time, the reaction was much faster. You don't understand the whole situation. Something snapped. My fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. You're correct. I'm not sure why my mother would look me in the eye and lie. I don't get why you take what appears to be your other children on a fantasy vacation and then tell me the money isn't there. I don't understand why I wasted 34 years believing I was your daughter when I'm plainly not. So, please clarify the circumstance. The dots emerged and disappeared multiple times. Then my phone rang. Mom called. I declined and sent another text saying, text only. What came back was lengthy, clearly typed, and retyped multiple times. Those are family members I have not seen in years due to difficult circumstances. Your father and I meticulously organized this reunion so that you would not be overwhelmed by family strife that you had never experienced. We planned to tell you everything when the moment was right. This was not about excluding you. We really love you. Please believe that. I reread it 3 times. Each word was carefully chosen, and every justification was precisely made. Who are they? You are half-siblings from before your father and I got married. It is complicated. 3 half-siblings. 3 people that resembled both my parents. 3 persons who had seemingly been kept hidden my entire life. How is this even possible? You are both their parents. A lengthier pause this time. No, we need to talk in person. This isn't something for text. Make it work for text, or don't bother explaining at all. The response took over 25 minutes. Your father has 2 children from his previous relationship. I had one. When we got together, their other parents had custody, and it was a mess. We were young. We made the decisions we thought were best. We attempted to maintain relationships with them after you were born. But it proved difficult. They were hurt and outraged. Eventually we lost contact. They recently reached out, hoping to reconnect. We felt Paris could be a new beginning. I sat with that explanation, attempting to make it make sense. I had no idea 3 of my half-siblings existed. Relationships that ended before I was born. A reunion trip I was not informed about. Because why? So you believed lying to me and excluding me was the greatest way to deal with a fresh start? We did not want to complicate matters. They were already worried about reconnecting. Adding another person they'd never met seemed like too much. Another human. That's what I was. Too much. A complication. I'm your daughter, not another person. Of course you are. You are my baby girl, but they have been injured for a long time, and we wanted to work on healing those connections first. We were going to notify you later and maybe arrange for everyone to meet shortly. The answer was almost reasonable, made sense, and almost justified the deception. But it didn't. Not even close. You could have told me the truth. You could have said, we are reconnecting with your half-siblings and we need to make this vacation with only them first. I am 34 years old. I would have understood. Instead, you created a falsehood about budgetary issues. I know you're correct. I apologize. It was wrong. I panicked and stated what came to mind. When did you intend on telling me? Before or after Ashley uploaded 98 images for the world to see? No reaction for a while. Then, I didn't realize she was publishing images. She was not supposed to, but she did, and now I understand. So, what did you need help with? The shift of subject seemed to catch her off guard. The dots appeared and disappeared several times before she responded. Your father needs minor surgery next month. Nothing serious, but he will need someone to transport him home and accompany him for the first day. I have a work conference that I must skip. I read the message 5 times. She wanted me to care for my father, who had spent thousands of dollars on a Paris reunion that I was not invited to. The father who had chosen to reconnect with children who had been absent from his life for decades over being truthful with the daughter he had raised. Ask one of your other children. They don't live nearby, and it's only one day. Please. I'm busy that week. You don't even know which week it is yet. It doesn't matter. Whatever week it is, I am occupied. Do not be childish about this. Your father needs you. Childish. She called me childish. I looked at the Facebook photographs again, my parents laughing in Paris, their other children smiling. A family is complete without me. He needed me as he was debating whether to be open about his secret family reunion. He needed me when he had to choose between lying and trusting me enough to disclose the truth. He didn't appear to need me back then. This is different. This concerns his health. This is about you requesting free caretaker work from the daughter you lied to. I apologized. What else do you want? What did I want? An explanation that made sense. A time machine could undo the betrayal. My parents truly valued me. I'd like you to understand why this hurts. I want you to imagine how it felt seeing those photos. To know that you all spent a week together making memories and being a family, while I bought your lie and felt sorry for you missing your anniversary trip. I do understand, but punishing your father by refusing to help with his surgery isn't the answer. I am not punishing anyone. I am simply unavailable. As if you were unwilling to be truthful with me. As if I were unavailable to get an invitation to Paris. You're being incredibly selfish. The word landed like a smack. Selfish. I was selfish for not quickly forgiving a lie and offering to care for someone who had purposefully excluded me from a key family occasion. Do you know what is selfish, Mom? Lying directly to your daughter's face. Spending thousands of dollars on a trip that you pretend you cannot afford while excluding her. You never mentioned your other 3 children. Then you call and ask for favors when you need them. That is selfish. Those relationships are complicated in ways you can't understand. Then help me comprehend. Tell me the full truth. Show me that you respect me enough to be honest. The dots appeared, disappeared, and reappeared. When can we meet for coffee? We cannot. You must let me explain properly. I don't need to do anything. You're the one who requires something from me, so explain here or don't. Another long wait. Followed by a wall of words. Fine. Your father got married before me. They had twins, Ethan and Chloe. When they split, his ex-wife relocated to California with their children. He had summer visits, but they were dirty and terrible. I had Lily from a prior relationship. Her father was not interested. When your father and I got together, we tried to unite the family, but the kids were furious and hurt. Ethan and Chloe blamed me for their parents' divorce, which occurred before I met your father. Lily felt that she was losing me. The situation was chaotic. We eventually had you, and we hoped that a baby would bring everyone together. Instead, it made matters worse. The older children felt replaced. Lily was jealous. Their other parents used everything against us. We were young and overwhelmed. We took the difficult decision to pull back and let the elder children live stable lives with their other parents, rather than in constant conflict with us. We sent money, cards and gifts, and tried to establish contact, but they eventually stopped replying. We believed we had lost them forever. Then last year, Ethan reached out. He's married now, has perspective, and wanted to recover. Chloe and Lily felt the same way. We've been rebuilding steadily. Paris was meant to be symbolic, a new beginning. We didn't tell you because we didn't want to raise your expectations if it failed, and we didn't want to burden you with decades of family history. We wanted to protect you. I read it twice. It was the most information I'd ever received about my parents' past. It addressed the mechanics, but it didn't explain why they chose to lie over trusting me with the truth. I am 34. You did not need to defend me. You are our baby. We will always wish to safeguard you. By lying? By excluding me? Making me feel like I don't matter? You're more important than anything. But it was about them, not you. It became about me the second you lied to my face. What would you like me to say? I have apologized. I have explained. I can't change what happened. I want you to know that this broke something. I want you to know you chose them over me. I'd like you to admit that your protection felt like rejection. I've never chosen them above you. I choose to approach a delicate subject cautiously. You decided to lie. Own that. Fine. I decided to lie. I was mistaken. Will you now aid your father? The arrogance of it nearly made me chuckle. An admission of fault was promptly followed by the same request she had begun with. No. He is your father. He's also someone who values reconciliation with children he hasn't seen in decades over honesty with the daughter he raised. He made his pick. I'm making mine. You'll regret this. Maybe. But right now, my main regret is that I didn't see this coming. Seeing what's coming? That I was never truly a part of your family. I was the child you had to keep. They were the kids you wanted. That's not true. Prove it. Show me one piece of evidence that I am as important to you as they are. No response. The dots appeared and faded multiple times, but no message arrived. I waited for 25 minutes. Nothing. Then 1 hour. Finally my phone called again. Dad. This time, I declined it. He called right back. I declined again. He texted me, "Your mother is very upset. Call me." I responded, "I'm sure the family you spent a week with in Paris can comfort her. Do not be like this. We love you. You have a funny way of showing it. We made a mistake. Let us make things right. How are you going to uninvent the lie? Uninvite your other children to Paris and bring me instead. Travel back in time and tell me the truth from the start? Be reasonable. I'm being sensible. You lied. I found out. Now you want a favor." The reasonable answer is no. Family helps family. These words sat on my screen, loaded with sarcasm. Family helps family. My family left me out. My relatives lied to me. The family who expected me to forgive and forget because they required something. Ask your family. You currently have 3 additional children. I'm confident one of them can assist. You're being petty. I am being honest. Something I recently discovered that this family struggles with. My father did not respond. The hush lasted for hours. Around midnight my mother texted again. "Please consider what you're doing. Your father's procedure is very crucial. My emotional well-being is also crucial. Clearly less essential than your Paris reunion, but significant to me. We can sort this out. Simply help him first. Then we'll sit down and hash it out. So, help me first. Then maybe you'll respect me enough to have a proper discourse. That's not how this works. What do you want from us?" The question hung there. What did I want? An apology? I'd received a half-hearted one. What's the truth? She gave me a variation of it. Understanding? It seemed inconceivable. I want you to deal with the repercussions of your decisions. I want you to understand that once shattered, trust does not heal itself. I want you to feel a fraction of how I felt when I saw those photographs. So, you want revenge. I seek accountability. By refusing to assist with a medical operation, you are establishing that I am unavailable whenever you require assistance, regardless of how you treat me. This is cruel. No. Lying in someone's face and then uploading vacation images for all to see is harsh. Calling your kid juvenile and selfish because she has been harmed is cruel. I'm simply unavailable. My father responded with another long silence. I'll ask Ashley's daughter to help. She's made previous offers. Ashley, the neighbor who had uploaded all of the images, who had accompanied them to Paris and who appeared to be more connected with my family than I was. That sounds perfect. Your mother is heartbroken. She will recover. She has 3 other children to console her. Stop throwing that in our faces. Stop claiming you had no idea what you were doing. No further messages arrived that night. The next morning, I received an email from my mother. Long, thorough, and emotional. She talked again about the delicate family relationships. Her desire to protect me, and her unwavering love for me. She promised to prepare a unique trip for just the 3 of us. She swore it would never happen again. She made no apologies for calling me selfish. She did not admit that lying was wrong beyond a simple, "mistakes were made" comment. She didn't seem to get why trust wasn't instantaneously restored. I did not respond. Days turned into weeks. My father's surgery came and went. According to Facebook, Ashley's daughter did assist. Mom thanked her, referring to her as an angel in our time of need. She said nothing about her actual daughter, who rejected to help. I blocked them both on social media and changed my relationship status to, "It's complicated," as a private joke with myself. Friends inquired if everything was fine with my parents. I gave vague replies about growing apart, the need for space and family differences. The facts seemed too difficult to describe. How do you tell people that you found your parents had 3 more children that they had kept concealed throughout your life, that they had taken those youngsters on a fantasy vacation while lying to you about their financial problems? That when questioned, they apologized, but then quickly requested favors? It sounded absurd, even in my own thoughts. A month after the surgery, my mother delivered flowers to my school. A large expensive arrangement with a note reading, "Missing my daughter. Love, Mom." I presented them to the school secretary. 2 months later, my father arrived at my apartment. I saw him through the glass but did not answer the door. He knocked for 12 minutes before leaving an envelope under the doorstep. Inside was a handwritten letter, several pages long. He shared his thoughts on the divorce, losing custody, and the sorrow of estrangement from his elder children. He talked about how important having me was to him, how much he wanted and loved me. He explained that the Paris trip was his idea, a desperate attempt to repair decades-old wounds before it was too late. He still has not apologized for the untruth. The letter concluded with, "I hope one day you will forgive us. We are still your parents, we still love you." The door is constantly open. I tucked the letter away and tried to get on with my life, but the hurt remained fresh. Every time I saw a family together, I thought about those images. Every time someone addressed their parents, I felt a sense of betrayal. Every holiday without communication felt difficult and essential. 4 months after everything broke apart, Ethan added me as a Facebook friend. I gazed at the request for a long time. My half-brother, one of the persons in those Paris images, and one of the reasons I'd been rejected. I accepted it out of curiosity. He sent a message instantly. "Hey, I realize this is strange. Our parents told us what had transpired." I wanted to reach out directly. Against my better judgment, I replied, "Why?" "Because they botched up. Chloe, Lily and I spoke about it. We didn't realize they had lied to you. We assumed you knew about us and chose not to attend." Something loosened in my chest. "They told you I couldn't make it. They heard you were busy at work. We were truly disappointed that we wouldn't get to meet you." I sat back and processed. They had lied to everyone. I was informed about budgetary concerns. I told them I was too busy. Kept us apart while claiming it was for everyone's advantage. "Have they told you anything about me before to the trip?" "Honestly, not much. We knew we had a younger half-sister. That's about it. They kept everything relatively separate. We assumed it was because you were not interested in connecting. I didn't know you existed until I saw the Paris photos." "Are you serious?" "Completely. I was 34 years old and had never heard of any of you." "Holy, that's really messed up. I am sorry." "Not your fault. Still, for what it's worth, we'd like to get to know you if you're interested, without our parents involved." I thought about it. These were my siblings. Whether I knew about them or not, they had not sought to be kept private. They had not made the decision to exclude me. Maybe. I still need time to comprehend everything. "I completely understand. I'll be here when you're ready." The conversation ended, but something had changed. The fury was still present, but it found a new focus. My parents' decisions had caused harm to many people. They had kept siblings apart. They had lied to everyone involved, and they still didn't seem to realize what they had done wrong. My mother left a voicemail for me on my birthday 4 months after our vacation to Paris. She was crying, telling me how much she missed me and how she hoped I would reconsider excluding them from my life. I did not call back. Instead, I texted Ethan. "I believe I'm ready to discuss more. Coffee sometime?" His response was quick. "Absolutely. Chloe and Lily have also been inquiring about you. We could all get together if you wish. Let's start with only you. Build up to the group setting. Deal." We met the following week at a cafe located midway between our apartments. He resembled his Facebook photos. Tall, with my father's features and my mother's coloring. It felt weird to see him in person. We talked for 4 hours about his childhood, his memories of visits with his father that ended when he was 14, the bewilderment and hurt of being driven out of his father's life, and the surprise of reconnecting and discovering he had a sister who had been kept in the dark. "They tried to control everything," he informed me. "Place everyone in separate boxes. I think they honestly thought it was for the best." "The best for whom?" I asked. "For them, so they didn't have to deal with the messiness of blended family complications." It made twisted sense. My parents attempted to avoid problems by compartmentalizing their life, but in doing so, they caused more anguish than if they had simply been honest from the beginning. "Do you believe they will ever realize what they did?" I asked. Ethan shrugged. "I do not know. Mom continues to try to rationalize it. Dad typically keeps quiet. They're wounded because you're not talking to them, but I don't think they understand why. They called me selfish." Of course they did. Taking accountability is difficult. We began meeting regularly. Then I met Chloe, who was intelligent, humorous, and possessed my mother's wit. Then came Lily, who was both quiet and warm. 3 siblings I'd never met. 3 people who knew what it was like to be controlled and manipulated by parents who thought they knew best. 6 months after Paris, Chloe sent a group message. "The parents want to prepare a family supper. All of us. They are asking if we think you will come." I stared at the message. Half of me wanted to reject on principle. But another half was tired of constantly being furious. Do they want to truly apologize or simply pretend nothing happened? Chloe responded, "Not sure. Do you want me to ask?" "Yes. And tell them that pretending is not an option." She responded an hour later. "Dad says he's prepared to have a difficult chat." Mom is resistant, but she swears she will try. Not good enough. Both of them must accept responsibility for their actions. Full accountability. No excuses. Ethan said, "We can be there as backup if you want." The thought of confronting my parents with my siblings present felt right. They could not gaslight me if there were witnesses. You couldn't call me childish or selfish in front of an audience. Okay, I will come. However, there are certain ground rules. They apologize nicely. They explain why they chose each option. And they understand that trust must be rebuilt, not commanded. Lily responded. We'll make sure they understand before we confirm. The meal was scheduled for the next month at my parents' place, which felt like entering enemy territory. But I had spent 34 years thinking that house was my home. Perhaps it was time to recapture it, or let it go permanently. The night of the dinner, I arrived with Ethan. Having him around made me feel braver. Chloe and Lily were already inside. My mom opened the door. She seemed older and thinner than I remembered, with red eyes. "Hi, sweetie," she murmured quietly. "Mom." We stood awkwardly until Ethan gently led me inside. The dining room table was arranged formally. My father stood as we arrived. He appeared uncomfortable in a way I hadn't seen previously. We all sat. The tension was suffocating. Eventually my father cleared his throat. "Thanks for coming. We understand it hasn't been easy." I waited and said nothing. "We wanted to explain ourselves," Mom said. "To help you understand." "No," I interrupted. "We're not going to explain things first. First and foremost, I apologize." "Real ones." They exchanged glances. Chloe gave them an encouraging nod. Dad talked first. "We're sorry we lied about our Paris trip. We assumed it would be easier than explaining the problem, but we were mistaken. It hurt you, and that was not our aim. It was better than nothing. Barely." "And?" I prompted. Mom drew a breath. "And we apologize for how we handled the entire affair. For being dishonest about your siblings. For attempting to control everyone individually rather than bringing you all together. For calling you selfish when you were clearly hurt." "Why did you do this?" I asked. The actual cause. Not the protective parent argument. The actual truth. They were silent for a long time. Then Dad replied, "Because it was easier. Because coping with the complexities of blended families, including damaged feelings and competing needs, was exhausting. Because we were selfish and preferred to avoid uncomfortable conversations." There it was, the truth. "We convinced ourselves it was for everyone's benefit," my mother said. "But actually, it was for us. We did not want to confront the implications of our previous decisions. We did not want to confess that we had failed to maintain relationships with Ethan, Chloe, and Lily. Starting over with them seemed like a second chance. And including you, entailed admitting all the ways we had kept everyone apart." Tears were scorching my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Do you know why that hurt so much?" "Yes," Mom whispered. "You were the daughter we raised. The one who was always present. But we treated you as if you were less important than the children we had lost. That was incorrect. That was extremely wrong." The only sound in the room was my mother crying. "I love you," she stated. "I love you so much, and I betrayed your confidence. I'm not sure whether I'll ever be able to remedy that, but I'd want to try. However long it takes." I looked around the table at my father, who appeared truly sorry. At Ethan, Chloe and Lily, who were all watching with encouraging looks. My mother was coming apart. "It's going to take time," I admitted. "A lot of time, and absolute honesty from now on. No more managing me. No more falsehoods, no matter how minor. No more treating me as if I'm too frail to handle the reality." "We can do that," Dad said. "We will do that. And therapy. Family therapy is for all of us." Mom nodded. "Whatever you need." "I'm not ready to forgive yet," I replied gently. "But I'm willing to try to rebuild." "That's more than we deserve," she explained. Perhaps it was. Maybe I was being overly generous. But I got weary of being furious. I was tired of the unhealed wound. Tired of spending holidays alone and receiving unreturned birthday voicemails. The supper was odd, but not bad. We basically talked about the surface. Ethan shared stories that made everyone chuckle. Chloe inquired about my job. Lily shared photos of her kitten. My parents were cautious around me, deferential in a way they hadn't been previously. It felt odd yet necessary. When I left, my mother hugged me at the door. I let her, even though it made me uneasy. "Thank you for coming," she muttered. "Thank you for giving us a chance." I drove home with Ethan and we were both quiet. That was intense, he finally stated. Yeah, you okay? I do not know. Maybe. For what it's worth, I believe you handled it well. You didn't let them off easily, but you also didn't entirely close the door. I wanted to, I confessed. Some of me still does. However, another part of me want to reunite with my family. Another side of my family. One in which everyone is honest. That is fair. That is actually healthy. We drove silently for a while longer. Then Ethan added, I am delighted we met. All that aside, I'm delighted I have a sister. Something warm stretched across my chest. Me too. The healing process was slow, painful, and essential therapy sessions, dinners where old wounds were painstakingly probed, conversations in which my parents were forced to face their embarrassment rather than avoid it. My mother battled the most. She desired rapid forgiveness and the restoration of normalcy. However, normalcy had disappeared. We were creating something new, and she needed to accept it. My father was quieter, but more consistent. He showed up for each therapy session. He listened more than he talked. He accepted my restrictions without complaining. A year after Paris, the 8 of us traveled to Boston, a place none of us had visited before. Neutral terrain for a family attempting to figure out who they were to one another. We walked the Freedom Trail, ate seafood in the North End, and snapped shots that included everyone. On the last night, while sitting in a restaurant facing the water, my mother raised her glass. To second chances, she remarked, and to the daughter who was brave enough to demand better from us. It was not ideal. The pain had not gone away, but we were trying, honestly, haphazardly, and poorly. Ethan caught my gaze across the table and smiled. Chloe squeezed my hand. Lily laughed at something Dad said. And for the first time in a year, I felt as if I belonged to something real. Not the neatly crafted fantasy that my parents had maintained for decades. Not the segmented relationships they'd attempted to control, but something genuine. Based on truth, accountability, and the hard effort of those who decided to participate. My mother still sought to rationalize her decisions. My father still struggled to convey his emotions. They tried though. And I was discovering that sometimes just trying is enough. The thrill of watching them face the repercussions of their misdeeds had evolved into something more valuable than my initial desire for revenge. I had regained my voice. I had created boundaries. I had discovered siblings I never knew I needed. My parents had realized that love without honesty isn't true love at all. When people asked about my family now, I gave a different response than before. I have siblings. We were figuring stuff out. My parents and I had gone through a difficult time, but we were rebuilding. The truth, as chaotic as it was, felt better than the well-crafted lies I'd been fed my entire life. My mother called again 2 years after the initial phone conversation concerning budget difficulties. This time, her voice was hopeful, yet guarded. I wanted to run something by you, she explained. Your father and I are planning another trip, a large family one. We'd like to invite everyone, and if you're interested, you can help plan it. I thought about it. About the girl who sat in a teacher's lounge, staring at images of Paris, feeling worthless and ostracized. About the woman I'd become. Someone who recognized her worth and demanded respect. Where were you thinking? We thought maybe you could choose somewhere you've always wanted to go. Italy, I said immediately. I've always wanted to see Italy. So Italy it is. Will you help me plan it? On one condition. Name it. There are no lies about anything, even if you believe you're protecting someone. Even if it is uncomfortable. Complete honesty. I promise, she replied. And for the first time in years, I trusted her. 8 months later, the 8 of us stood in front of the Colosseum taking a family portrait. This time I was in the center, with my mother's arm over my shoulders, my father on the opposite side, and my siblings encircling us. Ethan captured the photograph using a timer. We counted down together, smiling. Later when my mother shared it on Facebook with the message, "Family finally complete," I didn't feel the pang I expected. Instead, I felt near to peace. Ashley Reed said, "Beautiful family." I appreciated her reply since it was accurate. We were beautiful, in our shattered, rebuilt, and convoluted way. That night, over wine at a Trieste restaurant, Chloe asked me, "Do you think you've forgiven them?" I thought about the question thoroughly. I believe I have accepted what happened and decided to go on. Is this the same as forgiveness? I'm not sure, but it's enough for now. That's fair, Lily replied. Forgiveness is overrated anyway. Accountability works better. My mother overheard and shuddered slightly, but did not dispute. She had learned not to. To accountability, said Ethan, raising his glass. We all clinked glasses together. And in that moment, surrounded by individuals who had been strangers 2 years prior but were now unmistakably family, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: optimism, the kind of hope that comes from working hard to improve things, rather than pretending everything is good. From expressing the truth, even when it is painful. From demanding respect and extending grace in equal measure. My phone vibrated, a text from a pal back home. How was the trip? I gazed around the table at my imperfect parents, who were actually trying. My siblings, who'd become my best supporters, and the crazy, wonderful family we'd all chosen to create together. I responded, complicated, but nice. Very good. I was ignored by my daughter at her graduation. You don't deserve to be here, she said. Now she's called me 72 times, but it's too late. The restaurant was one of those places where you don't dare pronounce the wine list unless you've taken a class. And the lighting was dark enough to make everyone appear to have their life in order. I wore the only suit I had, a charcoal gray relic from my sister's wedding that I said I'd never wear again since it reminded me too much of that day. The tie was tight, the collar stiff, and my smile was as false as the leather boots. Nonetheless, I attended because my daughter was graduating, and that was important to me, regardless of what others thought. Denise sat across from me, glowing in a sleeveless blue dress that said, "I made it without trying too hard." Her boyfriend, or fiancé apparently, sat beside her, one of those startup kids with slicked back hair and a laugh that usually lasted just a few seconds longer than it should. Julia, my ex-wife, sat at the far end, clutching her wine like it was a prop in a scene she'd been rehearsing all her life. She didn't look at me once, which was just fine. I was used to remaining invisible. There were two of Denise's buddies, one from college and the other from high school, both overdressed and overly courteous. One person kept remarking how incredible it was that we were all here together, as if this was some kind of family reunion rather than a forced performance patched together for Instagram stories. The waiter then brought out the champagne and carefully poured it, glass by glass, while someone tapped a knife on a glass, the universal signal that something was about to be uttered. Denise stood. She handled her glass with grandeur. Her voice was soft and practiced. I knew the tone. Julia's voice was in Denise's mouth, with its passive, piercing elegance. I just want to say, Denise said slowly, how grateful I am to everyone who supported me through these last 4 years. It's been a long road, and I honestly couldn't have done it without the love of my mom, the encouragement of Brian, she gently grabbed his arm, and the friends who stuck by me when things got hard. She paused. People smiled, nodded, and gave mild approbation. My hands were folded on my lap. I was waiting. I felt a sensation in my chest, like someone turning a doorknob that hadn't been touched in years. And now that we're all here, she stared squarely at me, her eyes frigid than the pricey crab salad I hadn't finished. I want to acknowledge someone else. My father. Julia's head turned, as did others. A few faint giggles, the kind that break the silence when something feels odd. Denise smiled, but it was not warm, it was glassy. Dad, you showed up tonight. So that's something. I did not move. I did not blink. She continued, and her voice became clearer and sharper. But let's be honest. You didn't raise me. You didn't help me. You didn't show up to my birthdays. You didn't pick me up from practice. You weren't there for me when it mattered. You don't get to claim credit just because you bought a meal. You don't deserve to be here. The table froze. Even the ambient music and the clink of glasses on surrounding tables seemed to fade under the weight of that sentence. Julia didn't stop her, didn't interrupt, and didn't even appear ashamed. That stillness. God, that silence was the most obvious betrayal of all. I glanced at Denise and saw the baby I used to rock to sleep, the toddler who used to run to me on the playground, and the little girl who once referred to me as her hero. That girl vanished, replaced by a polished woman with my ex-wife's voice and stranger's eyes. I clapped once, twice, and 3 times. Slow, deliberate clapping, the type you get after a magic act you figured out halfway through. The table wasn't sure what to do. Denise's smile wavered. Julia's mouth moved, but she did not speak. No one else said anything. Then I grabbed my napkin, wiped my lips, and said, well, I guess I'll get the check. I departed before the dessert menu arrived. The walk to the parking lot was peaceful. I did not bang the door. I did not punch the steering wheel. I did not cry. I just drove. 30 minutes of highway and empty silence. Until I arrived at my driveway. Still wearing that stupid outfit. Inside I sat at my computer and signed into the tuition account. Which Julia never acknowledged, and Denise never inquired about. It was in my name, with years of savings poured into it. Tuition, rent, books, living expenses. Every penny she assumed came from scholarships and mom's hard work. Every debt she felt she didn't need. I was the reason. I gazed at the balance, then quietly moved every last dollar to a second account. Mine. I didn't think twice. Then I composed a short message, printed it, folded it in half, and placed it in an envelope. I addressed it to Denise. No lengthy letter, no dramatic monologue, just 2 words. Earn it. This morning, I awoke to 72 missed calls. Denise, Julia, unknown numbers, no voicemails, just the frantic ping 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 of a phone attempting to scream. I didn't respond. I prepared coffee, ate my breakfast slowly, and watched a squirrel on the fence drop a peanut it couldn't carry. It was unusually tranquil. She had not texted yet. Perhaps she expected me to cave. Maybe she expected me to feel guilty. I did not feel guilty. I felt seen, and for the first time in 22 years, I felt like I was actually doing something right. People always talk about presence as if it's an easy concept, as if simply showing up is enough to demonstrate your concern. But no one tells you what it's like to be present in the shadows, to love from the edges, and to spend years trying to matter to someone who is constantly told that you don't. I used to believe that if I remained constant, quiet, helpful and dependable, she would figure it out eventually. But now I understand that silence does not build bridges. It simply allows the opposing side to burn them without intervention. Denise was 4 when Julia and I divorced. I recall how she clutched to my trouser leg the day I packed my belongings and walked out of the house we'd spent almost a decade attempting to make into a home. Julia stood at the doorway, arms folded and stone-faced, as if she couldn't wait for me to leave so she could begin rewriting the story. "You can still be around," she added, and she meant it in the same way that a landlord would say, "You can stay until the lease runs out, and then raise the rent behind your back." It began with minor changes, rescheduled visits, unanswered phone calls, and overbooked holidays. I tried to be understanding. I swallowed it like medicine, thinking it was best not to upset the balance. I told myself that simply showing up was sufficient, even if I had to wait in the car while she prepared. Even if I received the off-brand version of parenting, in which everything had already been chosen before I entered the room. I worked 2 jobs for the majority of Denise's childhood, warehouse shifts during the week, and bartending on weekends. I missed out on a lot. Not because I didn't want to be there, but because someone had to pay for the roof over both my and her heads. I paid child support on time, never missed a payment, and never disputed about the number Julia gave me. Even when things got tight, I remember one month having $38 left over after bills. $38. I bought a loaf of bread, some eggs, and a bag of apples, telling myself it was enough. When Denise reached 10, Julia enrolled her in a private school. Obviously I was not consulted. I was handed a new tuition invoice and an ultimatum. If you care about her future, you'll find a way. So I did. I canceled my health insurance, took on extra shifts, and said no to everything that wasn't her. Every month I wired money straight to the school. There are no questions, and no thanks are expected. And when Denise mentioned how much her mother sacrificed to get her into that school, I just nodded. What else was I expected to do? Pull her aside and tell her, "Actually, sweetheart, your mom was just the mouthpiece, while I was the checkbook." She went to Yale. I paid for each semester, all 10 of them. The irony is that she always said she received full-ride scholarships, that she earned them via merit, and that Julia handled the rest. But no one gets through 10 semesters without help, and that help came from me. Every semester, I received an invoice in my mailbox and paid it within 72 hours. I saved the confirmation emails. I'm not sure why. Perhaps I planned to reveal them to her someday. Maybe I assumed she would want to know. I was never even invited to her high school graduation. Julia explained that they only had 2 tickets. She took her sister. I learned about the ceremony from Denise's Facebook post, which featured a photo of her in the blue gown with honor cords. I drove there nevertheless, parked behind the school, and stood in the back row of bleachers, just close enough to see her face. She never realized I was there. I sent her a present anonymously. A silver bracelet engraved with her initials. She thanked her mother for it in a Facebook comment thread. I never corrected her. You want to discuss presents? Let's talk about the time Denise fractured her wrist in 8th grade, and Julia didn't contact me until 3 days afterward. Or when Denise needed a new laptop for school and I maxed out my credit card to get her the one she wanted, only to see her write online about how her mother came through yet again. Or the time she was hospitalized for stress in her sophomore year, which I learned about from a friend of a friend because Julia didn't want me to be troubled. I was there. Always there. Just not where others could see me. So when she stood there at that nice restaurant, surrounded by friends and glasses of wine that cost more than my monthly groceries, and told me I didn't help her, that I didn't raise her, and that I didn't deserve to be there, I didn't become angry. I didn't yell, cry, or slam my hand down like a soap opera parent attempting to win a scene. I just heard the echo of all those years. All those missed birthdays. All those quiet sacrifices she was never aware of because someone made certain she never saw them. And I grinned. Not out of joy, but out of something uglier, colder. Because I recognized the truth. She wasn't mistaken. Not in her eyes. And not in the reality Julia presented her. I'd allowed myself to become invisible, and now I was being punished for succeeding. You did nothing for me, she remarked. I replayed that statement over and over the next morning, sitting in silence with my coffee, allowing those words to hang in the air like smoke from a fire I didn't ignite. I did not return her calls. I didn't need to because, for once, I had the silence to myself. There's something horribly terrible about the way a falsehood, repeated deliberately, and with conviction over years, can seep into a child's bones and become their reality. Compass, and armor against the same person who would have taken a bullet for them, without hesitation. Julia did not launch an evident slander campaign following her divorce. No, she was too intelligent for that. She poisoned the well drop by drip, always with a smile, and just enough credible denial to make you doubt your own darn memory. Daddy works too much, she'd say when I missed a recital I hadn't been asked to, or, if Daddy loved you enough, he'd take you to Disneyland like Emily's dad, when I couldn't afford it. Denise as a child drank the poison like it was water. Julia had the ability, if you can call it that, to rewrite history before it happened. If Denise earned a C on a test, it was because I wasn't there to assist her study. If she sobbed at a birthday party, it was because I hadn't called that morning. If she didn't make varsity in 10th grade, it was because I didn't push her enough. Growing up, everything wrong became my responsibility, and everything right became a testament of Julia's courage as a single mother, despite the fact that she wasn't truly single, but rather deliberately coupled. And Denise took every warped interpretation of events, tucked them into her heart like little truths, and used them to build the wall that would eventually shut me out completely. I recall Denise asking for a pony when she was 7. A goddamn pony. During one of my visitation weekends, we were sitting in the mall's food court, munching soft pretzels, when she looked up at me and said, "Why won't you buy me a pony like Mom said you promised?" I was speechless. I chuckled at first, thinking she was joking, but her expression, that dead serious, already hurt look, made my stomach turn. "Sweetheart," I continued, "ponies need land, barns and food, but we live in a one-bedroom apartment." She stared down at her cinnamon sugar pretzel and whispered, "You just don't want me to be happy." And then I believe the moment I understood I was losing her. Not because of anything I did but because someone else was constructing a picture of me that I couldn't match with. A mythological deadbeat, untrustworthy, and selfish. A man who couldn't show up and didn't care. When he didn't, I became the scapegoat for every bump in the road, every minor childhood disappointment. Since it was easier than recognizing that the world doesn't always give you what you want, especially when the adults around you are too busy settling scores rather than parenting children. Julia had the advantage of being present for every tear, tantrum, and spelling bee, and she used that position as a sculptor's hammer and chisel, sculpting Denise's image of me, until there was nothing left but a shell of a guy who only existed to disappoint. And, God help me, I let her. Because every time I considered fighting back, bringing Julia to court, or requesting equal custody, I imagined Denise in the midst, wailing in a fluorescent-lit mediation room as two lawyers fought over her future. So I remained quiet. I continued writing checks. I kept showing up in the small ways I was permitted. I kept believing that if I was steady enough, if I was quiet, good and giving, Denise would be able to see through the fog by herself. However, she didn't. Over time I became a ghost with a checkbook. I was the dad who always paid but never showed up to the party, who sent Christmas gifts with no return address, and whose birthday calls went directly to voicemail. I was valuable, yet invisible. That's the thing about being invisible. People stop thinking about you as a person. They stop thinking you have sentiments, pride, or a breaking point. I was telling Tommy about all of this one night, sitting in his garage with a couple of cheap beers. The air thick with the smell of old motor oil and whatever regrets reside in a man's toolshed. He let me speak for a long time, did not interrupt, and simply nodded and grunted in the appropriate places. Then he leaned back in his broken lawn chair, took a long sip of his drink, and remarked, "You kept feeding a wolf hoping it wouldn't bite." Guess what, buddy? A bit. Tommy had a flair for telling the ugly truth in a single statement with no garnish. Later that night, I listened to Denise's message. She sounded different from the person who humiliated me over supper. Her voice was broken open, raw, and quite infantile in its desperation. "Please, Dad. We need to talk. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Just please call me." And for a little moment I almost did. But the echo of her comments at the table, "You don't deserve to be here," sounded louder than anything else. Because, despite what she claims now, that moment was not a mistake. It was not a slip of the tongue. It was how she genuinely saw me. The monster her mother created. Perhaps she enjoyed it that way. The first voicemail arrived just before daybreak. Her voice was shaking, partly sleeping, or perhaps just broken down in that raw early morning manner when the world seems colder than it is. I didn't respond. I just sat at the kitchen table, my coffee lukewarm, listening to the message play over the phone speaker, as if it were someone else's kid speaking. "Dad, I don't know what's happening. My card isn't working. And I have rent due Friday. Can you please call me?" The panic in her voice was not like the rage she directed at me over that supper. That was a slap in the face disguised as a toast, intended for a large audience. This was genuine, unrefined terror that cannot be faked. The second voicemail arrived 30 minutes later. She was crying now, with no pretense. "Dad, please. I think something's wrong with the account. I tried phoning Mom but she has no idea what I am talking about. Please can you call me?" She hesitated, perhaps expecting me to respond mid-message, like she used to do, assuming that if she wished hard enough, things would solve themselves. But nothing came. Just quiet. She hung up. By the fifth voicemail, she had stopped crying. Her voice had veered between begging and blaming, something Julia often did when things didn't go her way. "I don't know why you're doing this," Denise snapped into the receiver. "But it's not okay. I have responsibilities now. I have bills and an internship, and this is cruel, Dad. This is beneath you." As if she suddenly knew what was above or beneath me, as if she ever gave a damn before about what I carried on my back to give her the illusion of freedom. I sat through every message she left, each one becoming a bit more desperate, then angry, then quiet again, a full cycle unfolding in real time. By lunchtime there had been 72 missed calls, as well as short texts like, "Call me, what happened? Are you okay?" Then they got longer. "This isn't like you. I didn't mean what I said. Please don't do this to me." But I was not doing anything to her. I basically stopped doing everything for her. There is a distinction. One is an act of cruelty, while the other is a long overdue act of survival. Julia finally called at 2 p.m. when I believed Denise told her the whole story and understood Mom had no control over the consequences. Her voice was strong and furious, with that familiar tone she used when she believed she was right. "Mark, what the hell are you playing at?" she asked, not even saying hello. "Denise is in a crisis. Her internship is on the line. You know damn well that donation was tied to her placement. Her rent's unpaid, her laptop needs replacing. What do you expect her to do now?" I did not say anything for a second. Just listened to the clinking of her bangles on the phone, the impatience in her breathing, and the entitlement that had built up over years of making decisions she never paid for. And then I said, as frankly as I've ever spoken anything in my life, no. This time I'm just letting her see what that really feels like. She gasped, that dramatic, trained gasp I'd heard 100 times during our marriage when things didn't go her way. You're abandoning her, she declared, her voice rising like a siren. Again? Not abandoning, he replied. Just stepping out of the way. You raised her to believe I was nothing. Maybe it's time she lives in that world for real. She branded me selfish, cold, and vindictive, and said I'd never forgive myself, but none of it hit home the way it did before. I used to fold like cheap furniture when she said things like that, certain I was the villain because I didn't want to argue. But not this time. This time, I kept the stillness long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I hung up. Tommy arrived later that night. He always had perfect timing, like a working-class guardian angel with a cooler full of cheap beer and opinions as hot as his lawnmower exhaust. We sat in the garage like we did when I first came in. Same plastic chairs, same crappy radio station playing in the background. I told him everything, from the dinner to the bank transfer, and he just listened, nodding as men do when they know there is no counsel to offer, only solidarity. You sure this ain't gonna haunt you? He finally inquired, cracking open another beer and pushing it across the table toward me. I stared him dead in the eye and stated, Tommy, I've been haunted for at least 20 years, and the ghost knows my name. That night, I drove to the bank. Not out of terror or regret, but out of clarity. I closed the entire education account. Whatever remained, I opened a new account in my name alone. For once, money wasn't for rent or school, or for crises that I didn't know about until they were too late. That was for me. For the first time in over 2 decades, I felt something that didn't quite register as happy, but was close. Perhaps tranquility, or simply not feeling like I owed everyone everything. I spent all of my time sitting in the parking lot. Afterward, the motor was turned off, the lights lowered, and my phone was constantly ringing near me. I did not touch it. She burnt the bridge. I had just stopped swimming to the other side. It was nearly midnight when she finally arrived. Headlights flashed across the front of the home, like a timid ghost returning to haunt the living. Her automobile was parked sideways in the driveway, as if she had been too scared to straighten it. I watched from the living room window, the lights off, the TV turned off, sitting in the same chair where I used to read her goodnight stories when her voice was gentle and her love simple. She didn't knock right away, instead sitting in the car with the engine turned off, most likely rehearsing whatever version of herself she felt may break through the wall between us. I waited not out of pettiness or pride, but because I wanted her to truly embrace this moment, without the distraction of a phone, a script, or her mother mumbling lines behind her back. When she eventually knocked, it was soft and timid, as if she wasn't sure I'd answer, or perhaps she thought I shouldn't. A part of me agreed. But I opened the door anyhow, and there she was. No makeup, curled lashes, or flawless posture, just raw and true in the way that only someone truly vulnerable can be. Her hair was twisted back in a jumble, as it always did when she was studying late or crying too hard to notice her reflection. Her eyes looked as if she hadn't slept since the dinner. Despite the chaos, she looked more like my kid than she had in years. We stood in the doorway for a long time, simply breathing. She did not try to hug me. I did not move aside to let her in. Finally she asked, "Why did you do that?" Her voice was no longer furious, it was something heavier, something that wanted to comprehend rather than battle. "Why did you turn everything off?" I did not raise my voice. I did not move from the threshold. I stared her full in the eyes and replied, "You told me I didn't do anything. So I stopped doing something." I saw the words land softly but sharply, like broken glass. Her shoulders dropped. It was the first crack. She didn't expect me to be so honest, especially after years of cutting my tongue bloody. "I didn't know," she murmured, her voice wavering like a radio station in between frequencies. "I promise I did not know, Dad." Mom responded, "You didn't pay, you didn't care, and we were on our own." She looked up, eyes rimmed red, fingers curling into her sleeves like a child again. I believed her. Of course she did. Children always believe the parent who is still present, the one who prepares their breakfast and fills their minds with stories, while the other parent becomes a silhouette in a photo frame. You believed her because I let you, I stated softly but steadily. Not out of cruelty, but because I had finally discovered my spine and was not going to give it up. Every time I attempted to press for more, she forced you to pick. And with every shove I lost a bit more of you. So I stopped pushing, hoping you'd come back on your own sometime. Tears flowed. Then she quickly wiped them, as if they were shameful, as if I hadn't changed her diapers and comforted her through fevers and night terrors. But I still didn't take a step forward. I didn't comfort her because it wasn't the right time. This was the reckoning. So why didn't you fight harder to be in my life? She queried, almost shouting, as if the question had been lodged in her throat for years, and she had only now received permission to scream. Why didn't you break down the door? Because I was tired of bleeding just to prove I loved you, I muttered, and it came out harsher than I intended. But it was the truth, and she needed to hear it without sugar. Because I gave up every damn piece of myself, and you handed them all to someone else. She nodded slowly, as if she were swallowing a truth that would burn on the way down. I didn't know, she said again, this time quieter, as if the words were shattering in her chest. I didn't say anything for a long time but gazed at her, at the lady she'd grown into, at the girl who used to call me her best friend, but now treats me as a sad obligation. Do you want to rebuild something? I asked finally. Good. Then rebuild. But this time earn it. Like I did. She looked up, surprised, as if she expected forgiveness to be delivered like a coffee order. However, there was no free pass waiting. Not this time. Not after 22 years of erasing. She took a hesitant, unsure step forward, as if approaching a wounded animal. When she reached for my hand, I jerked back. Not aggressively or in rage, but just enough to make the message clear. Some bridges do not reconstruct themselves overnight, especially when they have been burned for so long that all that remains is ash and memories. Her eyes moistened again, but she did not argue. She did not plead. She stood still at the doorway, and I took a step backward. Then I went inside. The door did not bang. It closed softly, and for the first time in years, I felt something that no apology could ever provide. Not peace, but strength. It tasted like both justice and pain. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. My parents gave me 1 hour to leave the house when my brother set me up. Now my mom messages nonstop, asking for saving my brother from jail. Hello Reddit. I've been putting this off for a long time, but I thought it was appropriate to share after a recent conversation. This is how my brother destroyed my life, how my parents picked him over me, and how karma ultimately got the better of me. My family appeared normal from the outside when I was growing up. Middle class, 2 parents, a suburban residence, as usual. On the inside, however, it was a whole other matter. Since I was the eldest son, I was inevitably expected to be the responsible one, the decent kid, and the role model. And I was for the most part. I had good grades. I worked really hard, but I wasn't a genius. I was never in trouble. Nothing. No clashes, no detentions. I helped out around the house with everything from dishes to garbage removal, to watching my younger brother. Then there was Alex. My age was 2 years older than Alex's. And he had somehow learned the skill of manipulation, even as a child. This child could get away with lying about anything. Did he break anything? I was to blame. Was he caught slinking away? He would tell Mom that I made him fill in for me. Did he flunk an exam? Alex took my attention away from my studies. And they believed him each and every time. I used to believe that they were just kinder to him because he was the youngest. But as time went on, I understood that Alex was simply their favorite. What I did didn't matter. Even if he was a careless little snot and I was the ideal son, I was always expected to perform better. Not only did they think he was superior to me, but they also believed him to be so. We were constantly compared by Mom. Why can't you be more like Alex? Yes, Mom. He is a pathological liar in addition to being incredibly amiable and charming. What about Dad? He remained silent. However, whenever he did, it was always frustrating to me. You're older. You ought to be more responsible. Do you imply that I should just let him bully me? They had more than one favorite in Alex. He could not be touched. The pivotal moment. I had given up on attempting to win their approval by the time I turned 16. I wasn't disobedient in any way. I simply gave up trying. Gave up hoping they would hear my side of the story. And gave up on ever having a fair chance. Ceased to think that I would ever be sufficient, regardless of what I did. I became reticent. To reduce the amount of time I had to spend at home, I took a part-time job after school. I spent more time at the library, either reading for pleasure or studying. What about Alex? He was having a good time. Leaving covertly at night. Returning home intoxicated or high. Stealing cash from my room, Dad's wallet, and Mom's pocketbook. Spending time with the most repulsive individuals. Naturally, though, none of that was an issue, since Alex was the favored child. And me? I was merely used as a scapegoat. Furthermore, I was unaware of how bad things were going to get, despite my belief that I could manage it. The lie that destroyed everything is up next. The deception that ruined everything. I'd become accustomed to taking the blame for stuff I didn't do by the time I was 16. At that time, it was simply a fact of life. Alex suffers when Alex makes a mistake. Alex was the negative influence, and Alex was caught. Does Alex require a scapegoat? There's Alex. Even much I detested it, I had adapted to live with it, until Alex did something so horrible and inexcusable that it ruined my life. The ideal crime. For months, Alex had been stealing. Initially, he would steal minor items from stores, take money from Mom's pocketbook, and swipe cash from Dad's wallet in an attempt to get away with it. Then he became arrogant. He became friends with some of the older children. True scumbags. They forced him into more dangerous occupations, such as car breaking, pickpocketing, and theft. Then they broke into the home of a neighbor. I was not involved in it. When it occurred, I wasn't even at home. But guess who was held accountable when the police arrived at our door? Framing me for a crime I didn't commit as Alex's masterwork. That day, I felt something wasn't right as I walked in from school. Sitting in the living room were Mom and Dad. Mom seems to have shed a tear or two. Dad's jaw was clenched and his arms were crossed. What about Alex? Alex appeared to be the victim as he sat there, looking little and afraid. Dad threw my backpack to the ground at that point. Alex, what the devil is this? I took up my backpack and opened it, looking down in confusion. I felt sick to my stomach. Cash remaining in an envelope, a pair of watches, and a gold bracelet were found inside. My heart was racing when I gazed up at them. What on earth is this? I don't own this. Don't mislead us, Mom cried out. Dad gave a headshake. Today the police arrived. Last night someone broke into Mrs. Turner's home. She claimed to have seen someone moving stealthily. Can you guess who fits the description? I looked across at Alex. He refused to give me a glance. Tell them I didn't do this, Alex. Playing the part of an Oscar-winning actor, he simply gazed at the ground. He muttered, Alex, I saw you sneak out last night. I didn't want to believe it. I considered. Perhaps you were meeting a female, I thought. However, today I discovered this thing in your bag. I was furious and trembling. You're telling lies. Mom broke down in tears. Dad simply gave me the look of someone who doesn't care about me. A criminal was not raised by me. Then came the words that permanently altered my life. Stow your belongings and leave. Discarded as waste. I assumed that they were bluffing and would recognize their error in a few hours. However, no. I had an hour to pack, they said. 1 hour. No inquiries, no trial, no second chances. Alex had a smug little smile on his face as he watched me pack in the hallway. I desired to eject his teeth. However, I was aware that they would actually call the police if I touched him. Mom was still crying when I left the room. Dad didn't even bid us farewell. And Alex, he simply triumphantly stood there. I realized then that I would never be able to return. No place to go. No one to assist. For the first several nights, I slept on a friend's couch. I then began crashing at the rear of the convenience store where I was a part-time employee. Mr. Patel, the proprietor, was a saint. As long as I arrived on time for my shifts and didn't cause any issue, he allowed me to sleep in the storage room. There was nowhere else for me to go. Mom didn't call. Dad never showed up. Alex? He must have been having a great time celebrating his win. And me? I had to learn how to live by myself. The first difficult lesson is that you must preserve yourself. I hoped that they would realize their mistake. My mother would call me crying and ask for forgiveness one day. That my father will come to the realization that he threw away the wrong son. That Alex would make a mistake and people would be able to see him for who he truly was. However, that day never materialized. I saved every dime while working 2 jobs. Additionally, I had saved up enough money to rent a small apartment by the time I was 18. There wasn't much, just a single room with a folding chair and a mattress on the floor. It was mine though. And I gradually began creating a life for myself. A life without them. Next up, the knocking of karma. It never occurred to me that I would hear from them again. However, the truth was eventually revealed years later. Everything changed at that point. I had started my life from scratch by the time I was 18. It wasn't simple. During the day I worked in a warehouse, and at night I worked at a gas station. The only furniture I had in my small studio apartment was a folding chair and a mattress on the floor. I had to choose between food and rent on certain evenings, so I went to bed hungry. But what do you know? I owned it. There was nobody for me to answer to. I have no one to control. Nobody holds me accountable for things I didn't do. And I felt free for the first time in ages. However, the universe chose to reveal something lovely to me just when I believed that my past was behind me. Because, guess what? At last Alex was apprehended. And nobody was there to take the fall this time. The golden child's fall. It all began when my aunt called me at random. I nearly dismissed her name when it appeared on my phone because I hadn't spoken to any of my family members since they threw me out. However, my curiosity overcame me. I grabbed it. "You're not going to believe this, Alex," was the first thing she said. Yes. But I did. Since I was well certain that Alex would crash and burn, I simply didn't think it would occur that quickly. Alex had been stealing for years, it turned out. What began as minor shoplifting turned into credit card fraud, identity theft, and even the writing of counterfeit checks. And he was caught red-handed this time. When Alex was arrested, Mom and Dad's idyllic life fell apart. The entire deck of cards fell apart. Mom and Dad were ashamed. Their home was visited by the cops. All of a sudden, everyone in the neighborhood realized that their ideal son was a crook. His lawyer was not inexpensive, as they had to pay for it. Alex was facing real jail time. And you know what? This time, his false tears didn't work. Alex was blameless, for the first time in his life. What about my parents? They had to acknowledge that their destruction of their real son had been pointless. The first interaction in years. My mother sent me a message a week after Alex was arrested. I can still picture my hands shaking as I stared at my phone. It had been years since she had spoken to me. She was now extending her hand. I inhaled deeply before opening it. "Mom. Can we talk, Alex? I know it's been a while." Something inside of me told me, "No, let's see where this goes," even if I should have disregarded it. So I answered, "Me. What would you like?" And her response, "The most predictable garbage ever, huh? We need your assistance." The narrative of the tears. Instead of seeing her at her place, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. I had no intention of returning there. She appeared older, exhausted, and quite stressed when she first entered. And what did she do first? She started crying. "We made such a mistake, honey, Alex." I took a drink of my coffee. Indeed. She used a napkin to dab at her eyes. Alex came clean about everything. He explained to us how he had lied about everything, including you and the heist. I reclined. "And the reason you're here now is..." "What? Do you want your mess fixed by me?" She cast her gaze downward. "I'm drowning in legal bills, along with your father. Even though we have loans, they are insufficient. Alex too. He might end up in prison if we don't assist him." I waited for the punchline while I sat there. And indeed it arrived. "We were hoping you might be able to lend us some money, Alex, my love." That was it. I was unable to contain myself. I chuckled so loudly that everybody looked at me. I then leaned forward and gave her a direct look. "Let me clarify this. You ripped me out of your life, tossed me out when I was 16, and dubbed me a criminal. And you suddenly need me now that your true criminal kid is in trouble?" She appeared ashamed. "Alex, please. You're his brother." I gave a headshake. Number you used me as a scapegoat. I am now your fallback option. And Mom, I have something to tell you. I have stepped down from that role, abandoning them to the ruin they made. One final plea was made by her. We risk losing the house if we don't receive the money. I inhaled deeply. I then gave her a direct look and finally uttered what I had been wanting to say for years. I have already assisted you once. It wasn't appreciated by you. I will not repeat that error. I then left. The ultimate result. Alex was arrested. It will only last a few years. However, enough to eventually remove that arrogant expression off his face. The house was lost by Mom and Dad. It turns out that they went broke because they were so preoccupied with protecting Alex's ass. I didn't talk to them again. And me? I continued to construct my life. An actual one. One in which I wasn't someone's backup plan, their punching bag, or their ATM. And I felt calm for the first time in my life. Family, according to some, is forever. But me, family in my opinion, is earned. And I never got my money back from them. I haven't given my family much attention in years, and to be honest, I was better off without them. After severing connections, I concentrated on starting over. I eventually began my own business after moving to a larger city and working extremely hard. Just a little contracting business, nothing special. I created something I was proud of, compensated my employees well, and employed decent people. What about my family? I had no idea where they were. I didn't check in. They were never stalked on social media. I was never curious about their well-being. To me, they were ghosts. Until one of those spirits returned to haunt me one day. The unexpected reunion. It took place on a Tuesday at random. Someone sat down across from me as I was reviewing some invoices at a coffee shop. Already irritated, I looked up. People simply showing up at my table without invitation bothers me. Then I caught sight of his face. Alex. Older. Rougher. Not the same. Gone was his arrogant golden child grin. His previously flawless appearance was worn down and exhausted. His expensive clothing was swapped out for inexpensive items from resale stores. I just stared at him for a moment, trying to comprehend that he was here. Then he grinned as if nothing had occurred. It's been a while, big bro. His narrative of sobbing. I reclined in my seat. I was unaware that we were still referring to one another by that name. As if this were some kind of weird high school reunion, Alex laughed and rubbed the back of his neck. Look, dude, I realize it's been a long time since we spoke. Some time. As if he had completely forgotten that he had gotten me expelled from my own home and framed me for a crime the last time we met. I crossed my arms. Alex, what do you want? He shook his head and moaned. Observe. I made a mistake. I am aware of that. In prison, man, it transformed me. I had time to reflect. To think. Additionally, all I want to do is make things right. I waited for the joke while I looked at him. And indeed, it arrived. I've heard that you now own a business. I hoped you might give me a chance. Assist me in getting back on my feet. I laughed because I couldn't help myself. You want me to hire you? Seriously? Alex put on his most modest expression and nodded. Come on, man, we're brothers. Blood is blood, right? I put down my coffee and gave him a direct look. Blood was never the problem, Alex. It was you. His grin wavered. Come on, man. You can't still be mad about all that old. We were kids. I bent over. You weren't a kid when you stole from Mom. You weren't a kid when you committed fraud. And you sure as hell weren't a kid when you got me thrown out of my own home. Alex's facade of humility faltered a bit. Damn, man. You really just gonna hold a grudge forever? I picked up my coffee and got to my feet. Alex, I don't hold grudges. I just don't make the same mistake twice. I turned to go. He lost his temper at that point. It was the real Alex. You're still a fucking selfish prick, you know that? I halted and pivoted. The phony kind man persona has vanished. The real Alex was there. I knew you'd still be the same arrogant piece of shit. You always thought you were better than me. Always thought you were some saint. I simply gave a headshake. Nah, Alex. I don't think I'm better than you. I just know I'm not stupid enough to trust a thief. He sneered. You, Alex. You think you're some big-shot businessman now? You're just a bitter loser who doesn't know how to let go. With that, he bounded off. No farewell. Thank you for meeting me, but no. Just a grown-up man having a temper tantrum. Alex in his classic form. With a groan, I returned to my seat and grabbed my luggage. I realized then that my wallet was missing. Humans are constant. I went cold. I looked in the chair, my pockets, and beneath the table, but nothing was there. I dashed outdoors and looked around the street. Alex had already left. Then I simply burst out laughing. I'm laughing so hard I can't believe this shit. Because I had a realization at that very instant. Alex remained the same. Not behind bars. Not after all these years. Not after everything was lost. He remained the same jerk that he had always been. And I had almost permitted myself to think that he may be someone else. Fortunately, I never repeat the same error twice. The last farewell. I replaced my wallet, canceled my credit cards, and carried on with my life. Alex never got back to me. Failed to check on him. Didn't question his whereabouts. I was finished. Because of some individuals, they are not worthy of second opportunities. And now, there were no more individuals for Alex to use. Conclusion. It is common to hear the phrase, everyone deserves a second chance. However, I don't think so. Because of some individuals, they'll give it another go. Additionally, when you are handing them your wallet, they will steal it. Too lengthy, failed to read. I was falsely accused of a crime by my brother. I was expelled by my parents. When he was jailed years later, they learned the truth. They pleaded for my assistance. They should fuck off, I said. No regrets. Read it then. Was I too severe? Or did they receive just what they were due? Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Husband cheated on me with my sister, but toxic family sided with her. Years passed. They contacted me, begging for a kidney to save my sister. You think family will always have your back? After my sister ruined my marriage, I faced the impossible choice of saving her, or letting her suffer. All was fine until about 8 months ago. When my sister, Emily, 28, a female, returned to our hometown after residing in Florida since she was 18. Her long-term lover dumped her, and relocated to another city, leaving her impoverished. The circumstances surrounding their breakup remain mainly unknown. When my sister returned, she revealed that he had been cheating with men. I didn't know him very well, but that seemed far-fetched. I only met the guy 3 times because my sister would only come home for Christmas, and normally stayed for 3 to 4 days. He accompanied her twice during their 5-year relationship. I met him again 3 years ago, when my husband and I paid them a visit for a day, while on vacation. He didn't strike me as the type of guy who would have a double life and leave Emily with nothing. I tried to contact him once but was blocked, so I let it go. Emily went back in with my parents, Kelly, 55, a female, and Jimmy, 56, a man. For the first month she was here, she struggled to find a job, so I suggested that Ethan assist her. He is a higher up in his firm and assumed he would have some clout. He did, and she was able to secure a post in his department. This is a job within her field. My sister and I have never been particularly close. She is the golden child, at least according to our mother, and our father has no spine when it comes to her. It's not overtly clear, it's just a million subtle details. For example, when we turned 16, we both acquired automobiles, but mine was an 8-year-old Dodge Neon, and hers was a 2-year-old Mitsubishi Eclipse. Her dance rehearsals, costumes and contests have cost thousands of dollars over the years. Some of the competitions were 6 or 7 hours away, and they didn't blink an eye. Meanwhile, when I asked for $50 for a volleyball or basketball camp at our local college, they gave it to me, but you'd think I was asking them to build me my own arena. What annoyed me the most was when I was 17. I went out with my partner, lost track of time, and arrived 15 minutes after curfew. They stole my automobile for a month just for that. The following year, when my sister arrived home 2 hours late and smelling like pot, she received a nasty talking to. I wasn't really sad when she left for college and chose to stay in Florida. Despite this, she began spending more and more time at our place, which I felt was wonderful at first, because it seemed like she was trying to be more connected to me. Then I noticed that she and Ethan were becoming increasingly familiar. They would discuss seemingly anything at length, They developed their own inside jokes. If I tried to include myself, they would respond, "Just a work thing." When I asked my husband about it, he simply stated that they had a lot in common and were working on various projects together at work. The first major red flag was that, after approximately a month, she would be at our house when I returned home from work. Ethan and I have distinct work schedules. While he works 8 to 4:30, I work 10 to 7. This happened rather often. When I inquired about it, I was usually told, "We had some work stuff to do." 2 months ago, I discovered something that made me question my own sanity. Every day before I leave for work, I make the bed. I always position the open side of the pillowcase toward the edge of the bed. When I arrived home that day, Emily had passed. She ate with us and then returned to my parents' place. As we climbed into bed, I noticed that 2 of the pillows had their cases turned towards the middle. I asked my hubby if he'd been in bed today. He looked surprised but responded, "No." "Why do you ask?" I responded, "The bed's not the same as I made it this morning." He said I must have been mistaken because no one was in the bed. I searched through his phone and laptop without his knowledge and discovered nothing. However, they worked together for 8 hours every day, 5 days a week, and then hung out after work. Why did they need to text? I felt as though I was losing my mind. 2 weeks ago, my folks invited us to dinner. Everything was going good until I noticed something. Ethan was only going by when Emily casually grabbed his arm. He looked at her, and she mumbled something. They pressed their foreheads together for only a second. Ethan jolted up and continued walking. Emily then simply looked at me, smiled, and returned to her task. I am not an idiot. I understand that this is a mountain of red flags. I really don't want to believe this. I've been in love with my hubby since I was 21. I planned a weekend trip to the city. I was going to ask him about things there. I hope this wasn't what I was thinking. Update 1. You survived, but my world has been decimated. We went on a weekend adventure. It was a lovely Friday night. We drank, danced, and were personal. We had further plans the next day, and I nearly said nothing. I thought he couldn't be doing both with her and with me. I was so incorrect. We were almost ready to start our Saturday, and I questioned him directly if he was having an affair with my sister. He teared up and answered, "Yes, he was." My heart sank. I asked him why. He apologized, saying he didn't want this to happen. They simply clicked, and before he knew it, they were kissing. Then more. I inquired whether he had been sleeping with her in our bed before I returned home from work. He simply turned his head in shame. I left. At that moment, all I had with me was my handbag, and I drove home alone. He took an Uber and arrived many hours later with my other belongings. He attempted to apologize, but I did not acknowledge him. Through my tears, he packed a bag and went to a motel. The following day, I informed my folks. They already knew. They apologized for what happened and informed me that Emily had departed last night and might not be back for a few days. I'm certain she went to stay with Ethan. That all occurred 3 months ago. Our divorce is almost finalized. Ethan found an apartment to rent right away, and Emily joined him. I am solely contacting him for our divorce. He originally told me I could only get the house and the savings. I believe this was guilt talking. Then, after a few days, he announced that we would have to split the house. I knew it was Emily in his ear. I had previously transferred everything from the savings account to a new one, so there was no fight. Just like that, 9 years of my existence had vanished. He has no idea what he's getting into. She is a narcissist, and will eventually discard him. Emily has been quite harsh throughout this. A few days after I found out, she mentioned me in a Facebook post. It was a selfie of her and him, with him kissing her cheek from behind. The caption said, "Feeling loved." It was terrible. I logged out of my account and deleted the app from my phone. She texted me about an hour later saying, "Sorry sis, I didn't mean to tag you. No hard feelings. I hope we can still be close. You'll meet your soulmate someday too." I blocked her. I blocked her on everything I could think of. My parents have not been much better. When I told them I was no longer going to contact Emily and Ethan, they tried to be sympathetic at first. My mother looked at me and said, "I'm sorry this happened. It shouldn't have happened this way, but your sister deserves to be happy too. You'll meet someone, and then we can put this all behind us." I became enraged and informed them about what Emily had tagged me in and the text she sent me. My mother replied, Well, you shouldn't be on that stuff anyway. My father hasn't said anything this entire time. He just sits there. I once asked him what he thought, and he simply answered, "I agree with your mother," before walking out of the room. I'm also cutting off any communication with them. The house will be sold soon, and I'll be moving to a different state. I'm not informing my family where or when. I haven't told them this is my plan. I just finished all of them. I wish them the worst. Update 2. Hello everybody. I realize it's been 4 years since I last updated everyone, but we had a huge event occur. I'll start by providing an update on myself. I am recently engaged. It took a lot of treatment to get me back out there. I began dating right soon after settling in Minnesota. I went on a decent first date, and then discovered what an annoying ass he was. I swore off guys forever after that. That's when I went to therapy to go with the trauma of my husband and sister's betrayal, as well as my parents' desertion. After a difficult year, I met Austin, a 37-year-old man. Yes, he shares the same first name as my father. LOL. But Austin is beautiful. He is a chef. He and his fraternal twin brother Jack own and operate a successful restaurant and bar. I'm incredibly excited to start my future with Austin. Enough about me. Now I'd like to tell you about my family's audacity. I had no contact for almost 9 months after I left. I didn't tell them where I moved. I only told a few of my closest friends and cousins. One day I returned home to find a wedding invitation in the mail. The occasion was Ethan and Emily's wedding. The invitation had a disgusting photo of them cuddling in a sunflower field. There was also a letter from my parents. It basically read like this. You need to forgive and put all of this behind us. We know things didn't go the best, but we're a family, and families work through problems. They also stated Emily wanted me to be a bridesmaid, just like she was for them. What is the actual F? That letter revived all kinds of old wounds. My therapist saw a significant increase in business as a result. Today I find it amusing, but later not so much. I did not reply at all. The only thing I did was figure out which members of my extended family informed my ex-family about my address, and cut them off as well. This takes us to the most recent drama. Last week, Ethan, of all people, visited my apartment. Austin and I do not live together yet, but that will change soon. Ethan looked nice. Too good, as if he was attempting to present his best. I asked him when he arrived. What do you want? He responded. I just want to talk. I'm so sorry for what I did. Emily and I are divorcing. I figured out she was unfaithful our whole marriage. Surprise, surprise. I don't expect you to take me back, but we should talk and get some closure for both of our sakes. I gave a double blink. He'd lost his mind. I gave him a straight face and replied, No, I give you no closure. You made your own bed. Did you really think that golden hoe of hers, that has had more visitors than the Holiday Inn, was suddenly going to put up a no vacancy sign, just because you put a ring on it? You're even dumber than I thought. I forgive nothing. I want nothing from you. I don't care. I'm better off now, and that will always be the case. You can go to hell. Then I turned and returned to my apartment, locking the door behind me. I immediately contacted my landlord, the loveliest old lady in the world. I've grown close to her over the last 4 years, and she knows about my former marriage. Ethan was still lurking in the corridor. A few minutes later, her 2 nephews, who help maintain the apartment grounds, arrived and informed Ethan that he was not welcome, and was on a forbidden list. If he returned, the police would be summoned for trespassing. I had hoped that was the last of it, but it wasn't. I now have a reasonably simple 9-to-5 work schedule, so I go to the restaurant practically every night Austin manages. I don't get in the way. I just hang there and take advantage of the few minutes he has available. I've made close friends with many of the staff, including many of Austin and Jack's family members, and it's truly the family setting I've always desired. I'm there the next night when Ethan walks in and sits down at my table. It was a slow Tuesday. Austin noticed and instantly walked over to check on me. He knew Ethan from the images I'd shown him. Ethan extended his hand to Austin. Austin just looked at it and asked, Do you want me to kick him out? I answered, Not yet. I have a couple of questions. Ethan perked up as if he had won something. What a tool. I asked him to explain what happened between him and Emily. I'll admit it was just morbid curiosity. He informed us that she was having at least 2 affairs with married men. Old habits die hard, I suppose. It had been 2 years. It was a tough time for me, he replied, his eyes rolling. I interrupted. You are not that dumb though. Did you protect yourself, or did she get half of all your stuff? With a smile, Ethan said, I stuck it out almost another year with her so I could start stowing away savings and selling off some assets. In the end, she got a fraction of what she would have. And what happened to her then? I inquired. Ethan responded, she had to move back in with your parents. Again. I was satisfied. Yes, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. You can go now. Austin, you heard her. Out of my restaurant. Ethan attempted to object. No, I want to. I interrupted him. No forgiveness, no closure. I just wanted to know my loser sister was back living at home. Get out. Austin stood and pointed to the door. Ethan looked around and noticed that the bartender and 2 waitstaff members were glaring at him. He stood, tucked his tail and turned towards the door. Austin began. And if you ever come back? Ethan instantly said, Yeah, I know. Cops trespassing. After he left, practically everyone checked on me. It was both pleasant and embarrassing. My beloved future in-laws phoned me. They demanded that I stay with Austin for the next few days just to be safe. It was very sweet. I've never had a family that looked after me so well. I did not hear from Ethan again, and I pray I never will. Update 3. Hello everybody. I did not expect it to happen, but I have another update for you. First, let me introduce myself. I am a 41-year-old mother of 2 boys, ages 6 and 2. Austin and I are doing quite well. I now work as a part-time office manager for the restaurant, and Austin's cousin, Samaya, invested in the business, and we launched a second location 3 years ago. It's been a lot more work, but with the 3 of them remaining highly committed in both places, we're successful. Plus it allows each of them some personal time. It wasn't ideal, but I believe I became pregnant while living with Austin, after his parents demanded it following my previous posting. They now joke that they had always wanted to be grandparents, and it was all part of the plan. Now for an update. After the previous time Ethan found me, I figured it was only a matter of time before my parents or sister showed up. It didn't happen immediately. I relaxed a little since I felt I had a strong support structure in place, and I returned to social media. I maintained no touch with much of my family, including extended family, but I had no illusions that they would be unable to locate me if they tried. I did not receive my first message until after our first child was born. It was from my mother. She offered a half-hearted apology, mentioned forgiveness, and inquired about her grandchild. I was going to block her, but I felt the inference that my child was her grandchild offensive. My response was, You do not have any grandchildren. I am not your daughter, and thus my children have no relation to you. If you want grandchildren, then you should encourage Emily to get out there and do what she does best. At that moment, I had blocked her. She created fresh accounts and attempted to contact me for a time, but I always denied or erased any requests or communications. This takes me to the recent drama. I was getting swamped with requests, texts, and other attempts to contact them. I read part of it, and it was a sob story about missing out on their grandchildren's lives and wanting to make amends. I honestly didn't care. I had no intention of including them in my life again. Then the most startling thing happened. Emily began reaching out to me. She wasn't saying much except that she really wanted to talk to me. After about 3 weeks, I consented to a Zoom meeting with just me and no kids. When it first started, people kept wanting to see the children. I was determined that it would not happen. They have 3 grandparents, Austin's mother, father, and grandmother. I was getting the impression that this was about something different. Emily looked dreadful, and my parents appeared old and worn. As we started talking, they all began apologizing for everything that had happened, even Emily. She admitted she was wrong to do what she did, and wished she could have her sister back. That was a ludicrous idea. Mom immediately took over, spewing her usual nonsense about being a family and looking out for one another. When she was finished, I simply looked at them and said, "Is that all you have? I'm going to leave." Then they yelled at me to wait, and the facade crumbled. The actual cause was soon to emerge. Apparently, Emily has been dealing with health challenges for the past few years. For whatever reason, her kidneys are failing, and she requires a transplant. That is why they were so persistent in contacting me. A family member is the most likely suitable match. I put it to them. This is why you call me? You want me to save her after what she did? My husband wasn't enough. Now she needs a body part from me too? My mother snapped. Stop being like this. All of that was a long time ago. She began choking up and crying as she continued. I get it. You hate us. But she is going to die if she doesn't get a transplant soon. Is that what you want? I know you think she wronged you in the worst way, but please, just this once, can we set that aside? I became quiet. I wanted to see if they said anything else. At some point he began to speak. Look, we're sorry for all that happened, but we have some pretty big problems. Between her medical bills and not being able to work, your mom and I are getting older and have our own problems. We've got a lot of issues. We need you to come back to Missouri and see if you are a match, but we also could use some help. Or we might lose the house. So, you need my kidney and my money, I told you. Don't put it like that, he said. Emily spoke up. Please, just come home. I need my big sister. I don't want to die. Can you just come and see if you're a match? If you're not, we will never contact you again. I told them I'd think about it, do some research, and let them know tonight. Tomorrow I finished the call and proceeded to speak with my husband. He told me he supported me completely, no matter what I did, and then asked if we should all travel together, or if he should simply come. I said no to both. I was going on my own. Sure, here's the continuation, punctuated while leaving the original material intact. I informed my old family that I would receive lab results here in Minnesota, and if I was a match, I would come there and we could discuss everything else. Then, about a week later, I received the findings, and it appeared that Emily and I were an ideal fit. I agreed to return home to St. Charles. By the time I arrived, Emily had developed some problems and needed to be brought to the hospital. This got everyone off my back about meeting for dinner, because I had no intention of doing anything social with these people. Especially because whenever they appeared to have a free minute, my parents would ask whether I had considered assisting them with their financial difficulties. They were able to stabilize Emily. I went to meet with the doctors who would perform the transplant. They began going over everything with me, and I expressed my want to have this chat with everyone. We all went into Emily's room. My folks were already present. The doctor started outlining the scenario. Emily had about 6 more months without a transplant. They went over the procedure with us all, and emphasized how perfect a match I was, how unlikely it was to find a more viable donor, and how important it was that we schedule the surgery as soon as possible. I stepped over to Emily and grasped her hand. I looked at her with deep brown eyes and replied, "Did you hear that? I'm a perfect match. Essentially, I'm the only person who can save you, and I'm not going to. You are the most vile, narcissistic piece of gutter trash I have ever known. I only came here so you would know the one person who could keep you alive is the one person you have wronged the most, and now you're paying for that with your life. You're going to die. You should make peace with that." Emily burst into tears, and my parents turned to confront me. The doctor and nurse stood there in complete disbelief. I turned to my parents and warned them, "Don't even talk to me, and don't you dare ever ask me for anything ever again. The only money I would ever spend on you would be for your funeral, under the stipulation that you be cremated and the ashes released to me, at which point I will promptly deposit your remains in the dirtiest john I can find." I left the room without looking back. I am back home, surrounded by my true family, and I couldn't be happier. Thanks for watching and being part of the drama. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a wild news story. My parents turned my celebration into my sister's engagement party. I cut them off. Years later, I became CEO, and they came crawling back. They used my money to throw a party, then announced my sister's engagement instead of my promotion. What did I say next? It shattered the room. My name is Nancy Allen. I was born and raised in a tranquil suburb of Oregon. From the outside, my family appeared to be the ideal of middle-class American life. A house with a lavender-filled front yard, a spotless white picket fence, and pleasant family dinners under soft lighting. However, the inside was far from as nice as it appeared. My parents, Mark and Linda Allen, were firm believers in modern parenting techniques, and I was their firstborn. My father, a a software engineer with a passion for math, had always wanted to have a bright, special child. My mother told her friends that she had read more than 40 books on child psychology before I was born. I was born into this world with tremendous expectations, monitored, measured, and experimented on like a test subject. But when I turned 3 and still couldn't count to 20, or write my name correctly, Mom's dismay was obvious. "Mark, I don't think she's capable of learning as quickly as we hoped," she said, her voice tinged with disappointment and trepidation. "We need to intervene early so we don't miss the golden stage." My father simply nodded slightly, but I recall how he looked at me that day, as if I were a math problem with the wrong answer, unworthy of further investigation. My younger sister Claire was born when I was 4 years old, and everything changed at home. Mom appeared to be another person. Every room in the house was packed with brain-boosting toys, emotion flashcards, and advanced learning tools often found in high educational institutions. I had clear memories of that afternoon. I was quietly building Lego blocks in the corner of the living room when Mom passed by, looked at me and said, "Claire is only 7 months old and already responding to 3-step sequences. You never mind, keep playing." Claire received a musical high chair, Swedish cloth books, and a private monitor teacher before she turned 2. And me? I had pre-printed workbooks, a stubby pencil, and daily reminders that I needed to work harder to achieve. When I was 8, I finished second in the school-wide art competition. I brought my painting home, filled with excitement. Mom looked at it and said, "Huh. Well, Claire read an entire short story in English today." Dad didn't say anything because he was busy putting together a logic problem board for Claire downstairs. I've learned not to anticipate anything. No compliments, no incentives, and no proud expressions. I gradually became a shadow in my own family. Ever present but never really seen. The breaking point came in the fall of the year I turned 12. I'd always had my own room, the upstairs one with the window facing the small woodland back our house, where morning light filtered through the drapes in gentle rays. I adored that room. It was the one place where I felt entirely myself. Claire barged in one evening, just as I was finishing up my schooling and about to hang a new drawing on the wall. "Mom says I'm moving up here. This room's bigger, and I need space for my new study corner." I looked at her and thought it was a joke. "No," I responded firmly. "This is my room." Claire shrugged and walked away. Everything had changed in less than 24 hours when I returned home from school. My possessions had been relocated to the smaller room near the laundry area. Claire's name now adorned the old room, which was outfitted with modern learning tools and a clean white study desk. I walked into the new room, which was small, cramped, and cold. The bed reclined against the wall. The desk was too small to hold my books and a lamp. I stood there with my hands clenched, sobbing silently. "Mom," I called. "Why would you do this? That was my room. I've had it since I was little." She didn't even turn around. "You're older now. You should learn to give way. Claire needs it more. Don't make a scene, Nancy." I did not respond. I stepped back in, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. The light from the hallway filtered through the gap under the door, pale and odd. For the first time, I felt it clearly. Despite being the firstborn, I was regarded as an afterthought in that household. Claire remained the focal point of the Allen household by the time I was in my senior year of high school. She was now a top student at a prominent private high school, driven around in a brand new SUV and receiving private tutoring twice a week. And me? I still attended public school, walked to class every morning, and handled everything on my own, from academics to extracurricular activities. I've never complained. I'd become accustomed to being in the background. But I wasn't expecting the moment when every pretense of impartiality was shattered right at the dinner table. My grandparents, Arthur and Helen, paid us a visit that night. They were the only ones in the family who made me feel seen and heard. We were eating Mom's lasagna as Claire discussed her summer program plans at Stanford. "That's wonderful," Grandma Helen replied, turning to me. "And what about you, Nancy? Have you thought about college yet?" I looked up for the first time, hoping to contribute something of my own. "I applied to the University of Oregon and UC Davis. I just got accepted into Oregon's business program, partial scholarship. If I get more financial aid, then—" I hadn't even finished when Mom put down her fork and knife. The sound resonated strongly. "Nancy," she said, her voice straining. "Your father and I have discussed it, and we are unable to provide additional tuition assistance this year." I blinked. Dad jumped in, as if rehearsed. "We need to prioritize Claire. She's been invited to an Ivy League prep program. It's a rare opportunity." My heart sank. "So all the college savings you said were for both of us are going to Claire?" Mom sighed, as if to state the obvious. "Claire has real potential. You, Nancy, might want to consider starting at community college and transferring. Or taking time to work. Isn't a bad option either." Not a bad option. It took me a second to realize they'd completely cut me off. The room went silent. No one spoke, save for the soft clink of Grandma Helen's spoon on her plate. "Linda," she said, her voice low but firm, "both girls are my granddaughters, and I can't sit here and watch one be cast aside." Mom pursed her lips. "Mom, this isn't—" "Yes, it is," Grandpa Arthur added. "It absolutely is our business." That night, as I was removing dishes from the kitchen, Grandma Helen approached and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry this burden anymore," I heard her say. "We'll pay for your college tuition. All of it, no loans needed." My eyes were crimson when I turned. "But that's too much money." "It's not too much when it's an investment in someone who tries." She smiled warmly. "You don't need favoritism to shine, Nancy. You've already done it on your own." That fall I moved into the dorms at the University of Oregon. The day I left home, Mom gave me a half-hearted hug at the door and said, "Be frugal. And don't expect anything from us." Claire didn't look up from her phone. I stepped out of that house carrying my bag across the front yard path, feeling as if I had opened a new door. One free of patronizing stares and stinging comparisons. College was a different world. I wasn't the typical youngster. No longer the specter of a self-proclaimed genius. I was Nancy Allen, a business student with a bright mind and a strong personality. Professors praised my strategic thinking. Friends approached me for help with assignments. Every weekend night I called my grandparents to keep them up to date on my progress. My parents didn't call. They didn't check in either. Surprisingly, I was not unhappy. I didn't need it any longer. I had stopped looking for validation in a place where it was never readily available. What I had now was genuine value. One that came from within. I began my final year of college with a level of certainty that I had never imagined. Late-night library study sessions, part-time shifts at a small downtown cafe where I studied how customers think, and hours spent studying every investment model I could find online, helped me stand apart. Dr. Elgin, one of my finance instructors, suggested I apply for a competitive summer internship at Bradley and Lane Capital, a well-known investment firm in Seattle. I recall the first interview. A glass conference room, a beautiful wood table and 3 managers seated across from me, each holding my resume. Zaylin, one of them, said, "What do you believe is the most important factor in developing an investment strategy?" I gave an answer. Understanding not just the data, but the psychology behind it. They exchanged glances and nods. I received the offer. From that summer forward, everything changed. After graduating with honors and having my study published in a financial magazine, I was offered a full-time position as a junior investment analyst at Bradley and Lane. I worked relentlessly, learning everything from risk studies and shareholder presentations to how to read between the lines on unpredictable market charts. 3 years later, when doing a standard assessment of a high-net-worth client portfolio, I discovered something concerning. A set of high-tech stocks in which our firm had made significant investments demonstrated signals of fake growth. The internal indications appeared to be especially robust when compared to the wider market. Most experts thought it had breakout potential. But I didn't. I spent 2 sleepless hours reading through every number, tracking back appendix reports, and eventually discovering the truth. Those businesses were inflating income through internal transactions, basically purchasing their own things to generate sales. If we did not withdraw in time, we would lose at least $32 million in customer assets. I couldn't be silent. That Monday morning, I entered the executive boardroom carrying a 42-page report and a risk simulation model. Nobody interrupted. When I finished, the CFO sat dumbfounded, then turned to the CEO and said, "She just saved the company." Within 3 days, the entire portfolio was reconstructed based on my proposal. And 6 months later, not only had we avoided a major loss, but the company recorded an 11.4% increase, the greatest in 7 years. I was promoted to lead investment strategist, but my journey didn't end there. I began using my after-hours time to create a risk score system based on market behavior, incorporating aspects such as consumer psychology, social media trends, and global political changes. It was the type of stuff the industry typically referred to as unquantifiable. I named it PRISM. Initially, PRISM was a personal project. However, after properly forecasting price fluctuations in 3 major stock groupings ahead of critical events, top management took notice. A year later, the method was fully integrated into the firm's fundamental strategy, allowing Bradley and Lane to outperform 2 of its main competitors in the sector. I still recall the day I was summoned to the senior boardroom. Richard Langley, the CEO, smiled at me once everyone had taken their seats. "Nancy," he responded, "we're creating an entirely new position, Chief Strategic Investment Officer, and no one is more deserving than you." I could barely breathe. Just 4 years ago I was advised I should work for a time and figure things out later. That role was more than just a title. It was proof of everything I had conquered, from being the ignored child in my own home, to being the one at the helm of a multi-million-dollar company's boardroom. That evening, I did not celebrate with champagne or a party. I visited my grandparents' house, a simple red brick home filled with warmth. Grandma Helen was baking, and Grandpa Arthur was preparing tea. I placed the appointment letter on the table. They grinned at each other. "Little Nancy," Grandpa added, now leading the way. I looked at him, then at Grandma, the first person who told me I didn't have to be extraordinary to be worthwhile. For the first time, I did not require anyone's approval. I had already proven it to myself by silent fortitude, dogged determination, and unshakable faith. After accepting the role as Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley and Lane, I knew I needed to document the event. Not with grandeur, but with a small, loving gathering of individuals who had supported me. My grandparents, a few close friends, and a couple of trustworthy co-workers. When I relayed the idea to my mother, she promptly suggested, "You should let us host it. Do it at home. Make it more intimate. The family can also reunite." I paused, but she added, "You only need to send the money for catering and decorations. I'll handle the guest list and everything else." I was skeptical, but I believed after all these years, this would be our chance to start anew. I transferred $3,500 to her account, and did not inquire further. A week later, when I arrived at the old house in Salem, where I'd grown up steadily sliding behind Claire's shadow, I never expected to walk into a brilliantly organized production. The mansion was more richly furnished than I had imagined. White orchids decorated the dining tables, silky golden ribbons wound up the staircase, and the aroma of great meals pervaded the environment. I noticed my grandparents at the small pub, speaking with a few family members. Claire climbed the steps in a gorgeous crimson satin gown, her face flawlessly made up. I didn't recognize the tall, polished man who was walking beside her. People gathered around, and just as I raised my glass to speak, my mother stood up, smiling. "Dear family," she said to you, "we're here today not just to reconnect, but to celebrate something truly special. Claire and her boyfriend Andrew are officially engaged." Cheers and applause erupted. I stood frozen. I turned to my mother. Her glance swept over me as if I were only another paid guest at a banquet. As I stepped forward to speak, my father grasped my wrist like a period at the end of a sentence. "Don't ruin this," he urged, his voice as sharp as steel. "If you make a scene now, don't expect anything else from this family. No contact, no inheritance, nothing." I released his hand from mine, and took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to get away and let them drown in their own play, but the other side, which had spent too long in the shadows, refused to remain silent. I returned to the center of the room, raised my champagne glass and said, "Excuse me, everyone. May I have just a moment?" All eyes were on me, and Claire paused mid-step. My mother's brow furrowed. "This gathering today," I continued softly but plainly, "was planned to celebrate a major milestone in my life. I was recently named Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley and Lane, a major financial firm in Seattle." I paused and searched the room. "I'm the one who sent the money for this event. My mother agreed to organize it and never once mentioned it would be turned into an engagement party." Murmurs echoed across the room. My grandparents remained frozen, astounded. I'm not against Claire's engagement, I told her. What I can't stay silent about is the fact that my own family tried to erase me from my own moment. Just like they did all throughout my childhood. Andrew looked at Claire, perplexed. You told me this was just a family gathering. Claire's face turned red. Andrew, I just wanted to wait for the right time. By using your sister's money to stage your big reveal? He asked, his voice dropping. I came here expecting to feel welcomed, not to watch someone be pushed out of their own moment. He put down his glass and walked away. Claire chased him in vain. The room plunged into uncomfortable silence. My father stood there, outraged. You should know your place, Nancy. This is still... No, I interrupted. This is a place built on favoritism. It's not a home anymore. I turned to my grandparents. They hadn't moved. Grandma Helen's eyes sparkled, and Grandpa Arthur took my hand as I approached them. I don't need the rest of this family to know who I am. I walked out the same door I'd previously left silently. But this time, I held my head high. Andrew left the party without saying anything, leaving behind Claire's terrified visage and a perplexed family. She chased him to the porch, but the car door shut before she could speak. The Mercedes' tail lights faded behind the trees, leaving the room silent after it had previously been full with laughter. Claire returned, her tears quickly replaced by wrath. You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand seeing me happy, so you destroy everything. I stood still. I did not reply. For the first time, I wasn't hurt. I was just sick of hearing the same boring blame repeated like a broken record. Claire, Grandma Helen said, her voice calm but firm. You made your own choices. Don't blame the consequences on your sister. My mother raced forward, her face blanched with rage and embarrassment. Nancy, who do you think you are to humiliate your sister in front of our family? I don't need to think, I said quietly. I just told the truth. And I've stayed quiet long enough. My father grabbed my mother's hand and tried to hold her back, but his eyes were blazing. If you walk out of here today, he said in a cold tone, you're no longer part of this family. Don't expect an inheritance. Don't expect to ever call us again. As far as we're concerned, you never existed. I was about to speak when Grandpa Arthur, who had been silent the entire evening, stepped forward, his voice ringing out like a bronze bell in the quiet room. David, if you're going to cut Nancy out of this family, then it's time we clarify a few things. Grandma Helen walked beside him, holding his hand. My mother looked at them, as if she knew what was coming. We updated our will 3 months ago, she replied gently. The entire estate, the house, the savings, the investment shares, it's all going to Nancy. My mother let out a surprising gasp. What? We've seen enough, Grandpa Arthur said. Enough to know who lives by their values, and who lives off of being coddled. Claire is my biological daughter, my mother nearly yelled. Why her? Because she's the only one in this family who has never demanded anything, complained, or stepped on others to elevate herself, Grandma Helen explained, her voice trembling slightly, but her gaze steady. We don't reward favoritism or deceit. Claire burst into tears as her pride disintegrated. She ran up the stairs, her red dress bursting like a bleeding stroke on a collapsing canvas. My mother stood in the middle of the room, lips trembling. My father turned away silently. My pulse pounded as I grasped my purse and gazed at my grandparents. I never asked for this. I don't need the inheritance. We know, Grandpa Arthur said, smiling. And that's exactly why you deserve it more than anyone. I looked around the house, which had once been a wound, but is now a stage for the truth to be shown. The family rose from their seats one by one, averting my gaze as if they had just woken up from a bad dream. Nobody stopped me when I turned to leave. I went outside, the spring night breeze stroking my cheeks and carrying the familiar scent of apple blossoms from the backyard. I heard the door close behind me, but this time it did not crash shut. It was the culmination of years of endurance. On the walk back to my grandparents' house, Grandma Helen reached out and lovingly grasped my hand. You don't have to fight to prove yourself anymore, Nancy, she once said to me. Now you get to just be. I looked at her with stinging eyes. I'd never felt so calm. Not because of money. This is not due to recognition. However, for the first time I chose myself over gaining acceptance from those who never truly wanted to see me. 3 years have passed since that night, when I walked out of my parents' house for the last time, carrying the truth, agony, and power I had no idea I possessed. I never looked back. I've never felt the impulse to. Throughout those 3 years, I gave my everything to my work at Bradley and Lane. Every early morning before dawn, every tranquil night on the 19th floor, I was there. Fine-tuning strategy, updating the Prism algorithm, listening to the market, and leading my team beyond previously insurmountable obstacles. When Richard Langley, the existing CEO, announced his retirement, no one expected him to choose me as his replacement. But for me, it was not luck. It was the conclusion of every effort, sleepless night, and difficult decision I had ever faced. I was 30 years old when I was officially appointed CEO of Bradley and Lane Capital, making me the company's youngest female CEO in its 60-plus year history. The announcement happened in the main hall. Camera lights are flashing. Every seat was filled with shareholders. I came on stage not to wow, but to represent a new generation, one that does not have to be born into grandeur to make its mark. After the lecture, I took out my phone and called my grandparents. "I did it," I exclaimed, my voice full of enthusiasm. Grandpa Arthur laughed on the other end, and Grandma Helen spoke words that I will never forget. "You've always been worthy, Nancy. From day one." Meanwhile, 40 miles away in Salem, where I grew up, not much had changed. Claire was now 27. She no longer wore her engagement ring or had steady employment. Andrew left that night, and her life became a series of failed attempts. She dropped a fashion course because she felt under too much pressure. I attempted being a content creator but quit, because no one gets my style. I eventually moved back in with our parents, into the room she had taken from me. I haven't interacted with my parents since that night. My grandparents occasionally mention that they have inquired about me through shared relationships, but I don't care any longer. I've realized that not every relationship is meant to last, especially when it is founded on denial and selfishness. Every Sunday afternoon I visit my grandparents for dinner. We toast bread and pore through old photo albums that I assumed were lost forever. Grandma Helen still tells me modest anecdotes about my upbringing. Grandpa Arthur swears he doesn't remember them, so I have to repeat every detail. I once asked them whether they had any regrets about leaving everything to me. "We didn't leave because of what it was worth," Grandma stated. "We left it to the one who understood the value of choice, the one who chose integrity over convenience, silence when it mattered, and voice when it counted." I smiled because I recognized that the most valuable inheritance they had given me was faith, not assets. One spring afternoon, as I was leaving the office after a global strategy meeting, I observed someone waiting in the main lobby. I squinted and saw it was Claire. She appeared smaller, with an anxious expression, but she maintained her signature look, a luxury coat and polished heels. "I'm not here to apologize," Claire said hastily, like a barrier. I just want to know how you're doing so well without anyone lifting you up." I looked at her, neither angry nor pitying. "Because I once had nothing, Claire. And that's when I learned to stand on my own. That's something you've never had to do." Claire looked at me for a long time. She said nothing and began to walk away. I'm not convinced she'll ever change. But I know I will never be the sister who always gave in, endured, and remained silent to keep the peace. I strolled back to my workplace where my team was ready to cooperate and build something fresh. And I realized that no matter where the path leads, as long as you don't abandon yourself, the journey will always be worthwhile. My story is more than just about how I overcame parental bias. It displays the power of perseverance and inner worth. I was once ignored, pushed aside at my own celebration. But I chose to ascend out of honesty and respect, rather than anger. Today, I no longer seek affirmation from those who previously rejected me, because I have found a community of people who believe in me. Most importantly, I learned to believe in myself. What are your thoughts on Nancy's decision? Was she overly harsh, or was it exactly what she deserved given what she had gone through? Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. My wife forged my name on a $330,000 loan, sold our house, and moved her boyfriend in. As they toasted their victory, FBI agents were already at the door. She stole my home, my savings, and 13 years of trust. But the moment I turned on the security feed, everything changed. My name is David, and I am a 42-year-old staff sergeant in the 82nd Airborne. Sarah decided she'd had enough of waiting after 4 months in Kandahar. The subject line was, "Let's be adults about this." The message was 3 sentences long. She had already filed the paperwork. She had already depleted our joint account. She had already brought her new boyfriend Jeremy into our Spokane home. I read the email twice, shut off my laptop, took a shower in the shared cubicle, dressed for my shift, and said nothing to anyone. When I returned to my bunk that night, I responded with a single word. Understood. That was it. There will be no arguing, begging or threats. Wilson, my bunkmate, recognized something was wrong. "Are you good, man?" he inquired, not looking up from his reading. "Yeah," I replied. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded and that was all. Military personnel know when to leave things alone. The truth is, I was not surprised. 6 months before deployment, circumstances had altered. Small things. Sarah stopped asking about my day, started working late at the dental office answering phones, and went to the gym 3 times a week without breaking a sweat. New clothing. I made new pals I had never met. New passwords for her phone. I did not confront her, start checking her texts, or follow her around. That is not who I am. But I was not blind either. So I made a few discreet movements of my own. Nothing dramatic, just cautious. I kept vital documents in a storage unit across town, including a birth certificate, marriage license, a property deed with only my name on it thanks to the VA loan, and military benefits documentation. I moved my grandfather's watch and my mother's antique silver to the same unit. Things that were important. I then opened a secret account with a different bank and began diverting a portion of my earnings there. Not enough for her to notice, but enough so that if things went wrong, I wouldn't have to start over. The night before my deployment, she hugged me at the airport and whispered, "Stay careful, okay?" Her eyes were dry, as if she were saying farewell to a coworker rather than a husband leaving for war. I should have known then, but part of me hoped I was mistaken. I was not. What she didn't realize was that I had planned for this moment. And what she didn't realize was that I never start fights, but I always end them. I first met Sarah at a friend's cookout in 2010. I was home between tours, staying with my friend Jason in Spokane. She was finishing nursing school but ended up working as an administrative assistant at a dental clinic instead, which she said was less stressful. We got married 8 months later. Sarah used to say she was proud of my service, but she never really understood it. Her father was a bank manager, and her brother was a pharmacist. No one in her family served in the military. She'd ask when I'd obtain a real job, unaware that after 15 years, the Army was my profession, not simply something I did to pass the time. We purchased our home in 2014. Nothing extravagant, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a tiny yard, and a peaceful area. My name was the only one on the mortgage because the VA loan was in my name, but I included her in the deed because that's what married people do. Share things. My father died a year after we married, from a heart attack while shoveling snow. My mother died 3 years later from lung cancer, despite never smoking a day in her life. They left me money. Not a fortune, but enough that Sarah and I could pay off our student loans while still having a cushion. During our marriage, I deployed 4 times. Twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan. Sarah appeared more distant and restless every time I returned home. As if she were playing a character she had outgrown. "I didn't sign up to be a military wife," she said once, when I proposed maybe re-enlisting for another 4 years. "I'm tired of being alone all the time." That made sense to me. I did. But the Army was the one place where I actually felt like I belonged. I was good at my job. People depended on me. In 2019, things began to change. Small things at the beginning. Sarah seemed annoyed when I called during her girls' night. Started talking about how her buddy Melissa had divorced her husband and was living her best life now. Started making comments about how we no longer had much in common. I advised counseling. She replied we were all right, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekend trips with pals I'd never met, the new outfits, and the gym membership she barely used. I should have challenged her. But this is not how I manage things, never have. My father taught me to ponder before I speak, to be certain before acting. So I kept an eye on everything. I prepared silently. Because my instincts told me something was coming, and in this life, You learn to trust your instincts. 2 weeks after receiving the divorce email, I was seated in the mess hall when my phone buzzed with a notice from our bank app. Another withdrawal of $88,500. Almost everything that was left. I set down my fork and accessed the app. The joint account balance had dropped to $22.37. Our funds of $47,000, which we had saved up over the years, were gone. I was completely switched to an account that I did not recognize. Murphy, one of the lads in my platoon, looked over. Is this bad news? I locked my phone. Nah, just some account stuff. That night, I called our bank from the BAF's call center. Sarah had been moving money for weeks, starting with tiny amounts and gradually increasing. The huge transfers began the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the corridor for a while, watching men laugh and call their children, wives, and parents. While my house was on fire, everyone else was going about their lives. That's when Wilson discovered me. Heard from Alvarez that you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner, he informed me. What's up? I don't typically discuss personal information, but Wilson helped me get out of a horrible situation in Kandahar once. I trusted him. My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house, I told her. Sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week. Wilson didn't say the typical man, I'm sorry. That's rough, or you'll find someone better. He just said, what's your plan? Not sure yet, I replied. He nodded. Let me know if you need anything. That night, I was unable to sleep. I took out my laptop and logged into our home security system, which Sarah undoubtedly forgot I could manage remotely. The cameras captured a weird truck in our driveway, as well as a man strolling our dog while holding my coffee mug and wearing my Seahawks sweater. Sarah was laughing in the kitchen that I had refurbished during my last leave. Something changed inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. Clearer. I closed the laptop and took out my phone. Created a list. Call James, an Army comrade turned lawyer. Check the VA loan terms. Contact the Master Sergeant about emergency leave. Review home refinance documentation, which Sarah mentioned briefly last year. Check the security of my military pension accounts. I wasn't feeling sad anymore. I did not even feel angry. I felt focused, as if I were preparing a mission. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about strategy. At 0500, before my shift began, I wrote James an email with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." An hour later, he replied, "Call me. Only use a secure line." When I hung up the phone, I knew exactly what to do. I did not need to yell, I did not need to threaten. I didn't even have to confront her. I merely had to wait and watch, and let her own actions set the trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Sarah I was returning home. Did not make a call. I did not text. I just booked into a motel in downtown Spokane using a different identity and contacted James. We met in a diner 5 miles outside of town. "You look like hell," he remarked, slipping into the booth. "I like it too," I said. James gave me a folder. We discussed everything, including house deeds, loan documents, and bank statements. "And this?" He drew out a second paper. "Found something interesting when I was digging into your finances." It was a refinance application, with my signature on it. Except it was not my signature. Not exactly. Someone attempted to reproduce it but overlooked details. The middle initial was incorrect, and the stroke pattern was not mine. "Sarah did what?" I inquired, even though I already knew the answer. James nodded. "It was 3 months ago. I used the equity to withdraw $330,000. Your signature is essential because the VA loan is in your name exclusively. Forge my signature, take out a loan against our house, then clear out our accounts and divorce me," I suggested. "Busy woman?" "It gets better," James explained. She added her boyfriend as a co-applicant. He has a past, including 2 DUIs and a fraud accusation from 2019. I took a deep breath. "What are my options?" "Several," James answered. "But first, you need to decide what you want." I thought about it. I want what I legally own. And I want her to realize the implications. James smiled. "Then here's what we do." The following day I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's vehicle had left, but Sarah's automobile remained in the driveway. I parked down the street and observed for a bit. I thought about knocking on the door, confronting her. But that was not the plan. Instead, I drove to the bank. I met with the loan officer who processed the refinance. I showed him my military ID. I showed him the actual signature on my driver's license. Showed him the falsified paperwork. His face turned pallid. "I'll need to report this immediately." "I understand," I replied. "I've already filed a police report." That night, Sarah texted me. "Who were you talking to at the bank?" Jeremy mentioned that someone was asking inquiries. I did not respond. The next day, I visited the county clerk's office. Filed paperwork to oppose the refinance owing to fraud. Registered an official notice that no changes may be performed to the property, without my presence. 2 days later, Sarah called. I let it go to voicemail. "David, we should talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing now? If this is about the divorce, we can talk like grown-ups. Like adults." She used the same terms in her email. I still haven't responded. James called that afternoon. They froze the refinance funds. And there is more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, correct? Which one bears your name? Yeah. He was pulled over this morning while driving on a suspended license from previous DUIs. They impounded the vehicle. Good, I said. He also had other intriguing things in the truck, such prescription sheets from Sarah's dental practice. They were not blank. I closed my eyes. She has been taking prescription pads. It looks that way. The police are conducting an investigation. I hung up and sat on the side of my motel bed. This was getting bigger than I had anticipated. Part of me wanted to call Sarah, warn her. Old habits. Then I remembered the security camera footage. My residence. My dog. My life was given away as if it didn't matter. This was the current path. I could not turn back. I honestly didn't want to. I met with the bank fraud investigator the following morning. Thompson was a little guy with sleepy eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. "This happens more often than you'd think," he explained, spreading papers across his desk. "Spouse deploys, other spouse sees an opportunity." "What happens now?" I asked. "We have frozen the proceeds from the fraudulent refinance. But there is an issue. Some of the money has already gone." "How much?" "About halfway, $14,600. I leaned forwards. "Where has it gone?" Thompson hesitated. "I'm not supposed to share that information." "This is my residence. My name was faked. My money was stolen." He slowly nodded and turned his computer screen to face me. "These are the transfers out of the refinance account." I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to Daniel Spencer. Not Jeremy. Someone else I hadn't heard of. "Who is Daniel Spencer?" I asked. Thompson shrugged. "This is not my department. But you should have your lawyer subpoena these records." I called James the moment I left the bank. "Daniel Spencer?" he repeated. "Let me run a check." An hour later he called back. "I got it. Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent. Specializes in rapid sales, cash deals." "She was planning to sell our house," I replied. The understanding struck me like a physical punch. It looks that way. The deposits were likely earnest money to get him started on a listing. But here's where things get interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan previously. "Jeremy Ryan, is that my wife's boyfriend?" "Yes, they've closed 3 agreements together during the last 2 years." I sat down on a park bench and tried to understand what had happened. So Sarah didn't just leave me for another guy. This was, what? A planned operation? "Maybe," James replied cautiously. I dug into Jeremy Ryan. He follows a pattern, getting connected with ladies going through divorce or deployed spouses. I've found 3 cases thus far. Each time the woman's home is sold for significantly less than market value to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan gets a haircut. Then he moves on. And Sarah. She knew about it. Hard to say. Maybe she is a victim too. Perhaps she's in on it. I rubbed my cheek. It wasn't only Sarah betraying me anymore. This was something larger. Something calculated. Other military families had also fallen victim. "What do we do?" I asked. "I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division," James informed me. "This spans state boundaries. Includes military troops and VA loans. They are interested." That night I sat in my hotel room drinking a beer and thinking about everything. I was wondering if Sarah had been playing me during our marriage, or if she had gotten caught up in Jeremy's plot. I wondered if it even mattered. My phone vibrated. Sarah again. David, please call me. The bank has said something about fraud. And Jeremy was arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's going on. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Who is Daniel Spencer?" 3 dots emerged as she began typing. Then he stopped. I started anew. Stopped. Finally, "I don't know what you're talking about." 14,600, I wrote. Multiple transfers. House listing. There was no reaction for 10 minutes. Afterward, "It's not what you think." I turned off the phone and went to bed. The following morning, James called. "The FBI wants to meet. They've been looking into Ryan and Spencer for months. You're not the first, but you could be the one to bust it open." For the first time since receiving the divorce email, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally being revealed. I spoke with 2 FBI agents at their Spokane field office, Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. They recorded my statement and made copies of all the materials James and I had acquired. "Your case helps establish a pattern," Agent Patel explained. "Shows intent and organization. Make it a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents." "What about Sarah?" I asked. "My wife, ex-wife." The agents exchanged stares. "We're still determining her level of involvement," Donovan explained gently. "Did she ever bring up money difficulties? Is there any pressure to sell the house?" I reflected. "She kept telling us we were house poor and should downsize. I didn't see a need. Our mortgage payments were manageable given my wage." Patel made a note. "When did this start?" "About 6 months ago. Around the time she must have met Jeremy." "And the refinance?" Donovan inquired. "Never discuss it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed." They asked more questions and took more notes. When we were finished, Patel gave me her card. "We will be in touch. In the meanwhile, do not confront your wife or Ryan. We have to develop this case carefully." I nodded. "Understood." That evening I returned to our neighborhood and parked down the street from our house. Jeremy's truck was back. He must have gotten it out of impound. Sarah's automobile was gone. My phone vibrated. Sarah texted, "We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow." I showed James the text during breakfast the next day. "Don't go," he suggested. "Nothing good can come from talking to her right now." "I won't," I said. "But I want to know what she's doing today while she thinks I'm meeting her." We drove to our house at 9:30 a.m. and parked across the street. Sarah emerged around 9:45 a.m., got into her car, and drove away, toward Riverfront Park. "What happens now?" James inquired. "Now we'll wait," I said. 20 minutes later, an automobile arrived. The real estate agent's logo is on the door. Daniel Spencer. Jeremy stepped out to greet him. They talked on the driveway, and then walked inside. "Should we follow them?" James inquired. I shake my head. "There's no need. Last year, I installed security cameras, both inside and outside. They upload to cloud storage." James smiled. "You didn't mention that before." "Never came up," I replied, taking out my phone. I launched the security app and adjusted the screen for James to see. Spencer and Jeremy were in the living room. Spencer was snapping photographs. Jeremy was pointing out aspects of the house. I turned the volume up. "Should list by the end of the week," Spencer said. "I've got a buyer interested already. Cash offer as usual." "How much?" Jeremy asked. $420. We listed at $470, and they offered $420. Everybody is happy. "How about the husband? Sarah claims he's causing issues." Spencer waved dismissively. "All military guys are the same. They create noise, but they have deployments and responsibilities. He'll accept a settlement to make it go away." I turned to face James. "Do you get it?" He was already capturing the feed with his phone. Every word. I forwarded the security feed access to Agent Patel with the following message. "Happening now." 30 minutes later, FBI trucks encircled our house. I watched from the street as agents led Spencer and Jeremy out in handcuffs. My telephone rang. Agent Patel. "Got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme," she claimed. "Additionally, conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We'll need a formal statement from you." Of course, I replied. And Mr. Briggs, your wife has just arrived at the scene. She is distressed. I gazed down the road. Sarah stood on our lawn, hands over her mouth, watching FBI officers carry boxes of paperwork from our home. Whatever happened to her? I asked. That depends, Patel replied. On what she knows. And on what you want. I took a hard look at Sarah. 13 years of marriage. Good years at the start, before whatever this had become. I just want what's right, I admitted finally. The federal case went swiftly. Jeremy and Spencer both accepted plea bargains, identifying themselves and numerous other accomplices in what turned out to be a 3-state campaign targeting military families. Sarah insisted she knew nothing about the wider strategy. Jeremy had convinced her that I was hiding money and intended to leave her with nothing. He said the refinance was his idea. She'd simply gone along with it. Maybe it was true, perhaps it wasn't. In every case, she consented to a settlement that included complete return of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension, and a formal confession to the forgery. In exchange, I did not file charges. 6 months after the email from Kandahar, the divorce was finalized. No fault. Overall, a clean break. Agent Patel called me on the day after the final paperwork was finalized. Jeremy Ryan received an 8-year sentence today for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Spencer received 12. I thought you'd like to know. Thank you, I replied. There's something else, she explained. We found proof that they had done this to 11 other military families. Your case helped us develop the pattern. Those families may receive their money back as a result of your actions. After we hung up, I sat on the porch of my rental apartment and watched the sunset. Thinking about those other families, those guys who deployed, believing their homes and marriages were secure, only to return to empty. I hadn't expected to be the one to bring down Jeremy and Spencer's organization. I only wanted what was mine. But occasionally, things work out unexpectedly. My phone vibrated. Sarah texted. I never intended for things to end like this. I did not respond. There was nothing more to say. 1 year later, I sold the house. I couldn't stand living in it any longer. Too many memories, too much treachery behind those walls. I used the money to purchase a tiny cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land. There's a creek running behind it. There are no neighbors for miles. I retired from the Army early. After 20 years of service, I had given enough. I got a dog, a German Shepherd named Scout. Started doing carpentry for locals. Nothing fancy, but it kept my hands busy while also paying the bills. My military pension covered the remainder. Sometimes I thought about Sarah. I wondered where she ended up. James learned she had returned to her hometown in Oregon to work at another dentist clinic. I suppose we're starting over. I didn't detest her anymore. To be honest, I didn't have many feelings for her. She had made her decisions. And so had I. I received a letter one evening from a woman in Fort Worth. When Jeremy and Spencer attempted to carry out their scheme on her, her husband was in the Navy and had been deployed. The FBI had given her my name as part of the investigation. She wrote, "You don't know me, but you saved our home. Thank you. You fought back when it would have been easy to simply walk away." I read it twice and pinned it to my refrigerator. Some days, when the silence seemed too loud, or the memories too harsh, I'd glance at the letter and recall that something wonderful had come out of it. Jeremy was still in prison when I last heard. Spencer too. The system worked for once. For my part, I was figuring out how to proceed. Take one calm day at a time. Create something fresh. Something that cannot be stolen, or forged, or betrayed. Something that was uniquely mine. For good. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.